Howdy, howdy, everybody. This is Random Encounters, and I am here with...
aeshmah. Hello, everybody. How are you all doing today? We brought a nice little showcase for this game's, third anniversary, which actually was at Monday of this month, the 30th of September. So we thought, we brought this cute little RPG to you because I think it kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people. Not many players or even speedrunners may know about this, which is a damn shame. So we will try to maybe eventually, hopefully, change this in the next 3 or so hours that it will take us to get through this.
Sounds good.
All right, I guess we're just, since this isn't really like a speedrun itself, it's more like an abridged showcase of the speedrun itself. So we'll get a little bit more into the strategies and what makes this game tick, etc. So we'll just go ahead and jump into the game right here. This is normally what the timer would start if we were in a speedrun setting. And as you might already be able to tell, and that is actually what initially drew me to the game itself, it is absolutely gorgeous. Like, it looks really, really beautiful. And it also plays really, really well, which we'll get to in a moment here. But for now, we get introduced to the 8 characters that we will be in control of. I won't go too much into the story of the game. That is kind of for you guys to experience yourself if you eventually pick up the game. But let's just say that these 8 characters are like the 8 demigods or the fated 8. There are a couple of different names for them. And kind of the gist of the story is that every 3 years, 8 people from across the world are elected as these demigods. They get like special powers, and then it is their job to basically protect the world from evil, yada yada yada. And after the 3 years are over, they die and pass on their powers to the next 8 people. And these 8 characters have been on the job for about 2.5 years now, so they are pretty far into their vigil, if you will. And things all of a sudden start happening. And as you can already tell by the music, the game really wants you to get into the action. But before we do that, let me actually go ahead and decrease the music volume just a little bit so I can talk about this in peace and quiet, because the menu settings or the settings that you can do in the game are actually pretty interesting to me. Because not only do you have the option between changing, it's English and Japanese, it's like fully voice acted in both of them. And your other comfort options. But if you look at the other stuff, you can, change if enemies are even on the field. Like, you can completely disable that if you want to. There will be no fights whatsoever. And you can also change if they will respawn or not. There are no random encounters in the game. They are all visible on the field. So these are like pretty nice comfort options. And it goes even further. You can even toggle on or off if you gain experience, SP, money, or even items from the fights. And if the party members are not actively participating in the fight, also get experience or not. So you can really see how you can make your own challenge runs out of this if you want to. And there are also different difficulties that you can select. But for now, we're going to leave most of that intact. We're going to be playing on normal difficulty, but I will switch on the weakness indicator. And the weakness indicator, as the name might imply, basically shows you if you have an attack selected and, select an enemy. If that enemy is weak against your attack, if it is resistant against it, if it may absorb it or whatnot. So it just makes, keeping track of all that a little bit easier while you are playing the game. And with that all in mind, let's actually go ahead and jump into it. So at the beginning, we're basically in the main town of this world, so to speak. This is Harmonia. And kind of how it works, there are like 5 different races. You have like the Marians, which are the humans. You have the Octans, which are these cat-like people. You have, you can see it in the back there, the big guy. You have the fish people, whose name I just forgot. And you have the Oasis, which are these bird people. And they live together in harmony because they are consuming these melons that you can see here, which are called harmelons. Because, otherwise they would not necessarily like each other, like the cat people would like to eat the fish people and so on and so forth. So that is not exactly good. But because of the harmelons, they are able to live together in harmony. And, well, the harmelon orchard here is under attack, so we are here to basically get rid of that. Now, as you can see, since you have all of your characters in the game like right from the beginning, you are basically free to go ahead and mix and match and get your favorite party going like right from the beginning. What we do in the speedrun here specifically is basically we want all of the fast characters out on the field so we can go before the enemies get a chance to act. Because, obviously if an enemy gets a turn like this, it loses you time. And since we are at the start of the run, obviously we can like one-shot basically anything. So every time an enemy is actually able to get a turn, it would be a little small time loss. Now you can't do anything against it, obviously, because there are 5 of them here. We are only 4, and only Arpeggio in the front and Caden down here are faster than enemies. So we obviously still get some enemy turns, but we want to try and get as few enemy interactions as we can throughout this. Dogma in the back here, he's actually our mage. He's like a big bulky guy, but he is our magic caster. So a little bit of slight conversionism, I think, because he is not like your tank or anything. Absolutely not. He will die very easily if you leave him in front. But yeah, it's like, like your typical RPGs, you're fighting a lot of small fry like rats and whatnot to go ahead as your first challenges, which I feel is like a little bit not that great because, as I said before, these people are supposed to be, demigods, the protectors of all the people of the world with special powers and whatnot. And they've done this for 2.5 years, but they're still like level 1 and fighting rats. So it's like, something doesn't really add up there, at least for me. I don't know, maybe there is a proper explanation for that, but I wasn't able to find it. Anyway, we are just making our way through this part of Harmonia, the town here, because, for some reason there are enemies here that we have to go ahead and defeat. So we'll just select a couple of different abilities to get rid of them pretty quickly. And a really nice thing that this game has is, if I go to the pause menu and if you watch my HP and my MP, outside of a battle, your HP will always regenerate. So you take that really cuts down on the amount of potions and stuff that you need to use. And if you are fighting in a town like we are right now, or if you are in a town, then also your MP will automatically regenerate. Now your MP do not regenerate if you are in a dungeon, as we will see just in a moment. So managing your MP is still a very big deal to get through it fast. But as you can see here, you saw it on Kaden right there, her MP completely filled up again, because we were in the town. And now we are in our first dungeon. This is the sewers. And this is where you can kind of see how this actually goes. There are 2 ways to initiate an encounter. One is to just run into it, or you can, use your sword like this and attack the enemy with it. And the difference between those 2 settings is basically if you just run into an enemy, there is a chance that the encounter starts normal, like now. Or you get a surprise attack by the enemy, which basically means that all of the enemy will go first before you get a turn. On the flip side, if you manage to hit an enemy with your sword, it also has, a high chance that the encounter will just start normally, but you also have a small chance to surprise the enemies, which means that all of your characters get to go first. So that basically means you always want to try and initiate a fight by, hitting them with their sword first. Little puzzle there. We have to jump on these switches to light up the mural in the background, so that opens a little passageway you saw right there, and that is where we will pick up our first ring power in just a second here.
My turn. This ends.
Just get rid of the enemies. And I'm going to fight these enemies to cut down a little bit on the grind that we will do, quote-unquote, soonish. But just to be sure, I am fighting these enemies deliberately. And here we got our first ring power. Now this is the physical ring power, and it allows us to shoot projectiles just like that. And so we can hit these switches. You cannot hit these switches with your sword for some reason. You have to use your ring power. And that is basically how some of the game's puzzles will work. But as you also might see, this is not an RPG that is like top-down, where you rock left, right, up, and down. This is like a 2D game where you can jump around and do all kinds of shenanigans with that. So I think it's a little bit more interesting to get from one point to another this way instead of, just walking or running wherever, because there actually is a little bit of platforming, especially later on in the game, which has a really nice movement to it as you start to gain more abilities and whatnot. Here's another little puzzle. We have to hit these 4 switches in the right order. There, you saw it like in this big door that I just passed. There's like a tablet that you can look at, which basically tells you which order you have to hit these in. But obviously we're doing, quote-unquote speedrun, so I know what the order is. Unless I forgot it and I'm gonna mess it up and look like an idiot, which I hope I won't. So we had one of them. The second one is up here. Do a little bit of backtracking to the third one up there. And then we do one more fight.
We've got this.
Sadly, I didn't get any of, or the one big encounter that I wanted, but I guess it's fine. I should still be able to get the necessary SP that I need. Just having a quick look at my MP down there.
So, what's the logic on going back for that switch rather than getting it on the first pass?
Because you have to hit them in the right order. So if you hit them out of order, you basically reset it. So that is, why you have to hit them in a specific order that the puzzle basically wants you to do there.
Okay, that makes sense.
But yeah, once you hit all of these, basically the door opens into the second area, and that is where we will fight our first boss in just a second here, after this last encounter. So let's go ahead and get through this one.
My turn.
So poison is basically the worst thing a rat can do to you, not because the poison is lethal or anything. It's just the longest animation out of all of their abilities that it has, and it's just it's a time waste. Basically, does nothing. And you're just sitting there and waiting for it to pass. Okay, so since Cress is a little bit low, I'm going to use an ether on her to bring that up a little bit. And the nice thing about all the restoratives in the game, they are percentage based. So you can see with a potion, it will always replenish 30% of your HP. An Omni Potion is 30% of the whole party. Ether, 30% MP, and so on and so forth. So basically, the more MP you have, or the more HP you have, the more potent these items will be. But that also means that a potion will always be useful to you. It's not like, in a lot of other games where a potion starts out healing you for like 100 HP, and at the end you have like 100,000 HP, so you're never going to use a potion, because why would you? It literally heals like less than 1% of your health.
Yep.
There are two ways in this game actually to basically make your character stronger. One is, of course, to just gain experience, and then they will level up, as you can see in the lower left corner of the screen there, and then their stats increase and whatnot. But every character also has access to the Ascension tree. And the Ascension tree is basically kind of like the sphere grid of Final Fantasy X, if you know that game, where all of your characters, have a little grid. This is not the only one that we'll have, we'll get more later. Where you can basically increase your stats or learn new abilities, learn new passive skills, and all of that good stuff. And that is actually the main way how we will increase the strength of our characters. For example, here is a little breakpoint where we need 35 SP, you can see it on the right side of the screen there, to unlock Nyx Blade, which is a new ability for Crest to use. We have 39 right now, so we just got just enough SP from the enemies to be able to learn this skill before the boss fight. And generally speaking, every enemy in the game, except some special enemies like bosses, will only ever give you 1 SP. So in order to get a lot of SP, you want to kill a lot of enemies. And before we go into this boss fight, let's switch these two characters around and also get Alec in, and then we will do our first boss fight. The first boss fight is going to be Octofairy. She has about 7,000 HP, if I'm not mistaken, and she is weak to light and lightning. So we have Eco here. He has a light spell, and you can see that if I hover over her, it says weak, which means that obviously my skill will deal extra damage to her. just like that. Then we use Alec and we try to poison her, which just, adds a little bit more damage over the course of the fight. Like I said, she is weak to lightning and light. That is why we learned this ability with Cress, so we can exploit her weakness even further. And then Dagmar is the one who will deal the most damage, because see, he deals like 2,500 damage with one cast, where the other is still like maybe a couple hundred or so. So we will basically do that again. And now her health bar is depleted. And this is like where the game already introduces you to multiple phase boss fights, because you can see that, I don't know, for some reason it's like not quite synced up with the transformation happening on screen in the actual animation, but whatever. And now we are on the second phase of the fight, where obviously the boss is going to be a little bit stronger than she was before. But that is like a general mechanic that you have to get used to during the game's boss fights, because basically every boss has multiple phases. So whenever you fully deplete their health bar, you kind of have to be ready for the fight to go on just a little while longer yet.
Yeah, I think with a lot of modern games, it's kind of like that. Some older games, not so much, but a lot of them have multiple HP locks, phase transformations.
But that is also like one of the routing things that came, when I was like routing this, I was like, okay, how can I make the most out of this? Or what is it that I need to do to get through these phases quickly? Because, you cannot over damage the enemies. Like, you can only reduce their health per phase to 0, because then they will completely heal up again for the next phase, right? So you kind of still want to find a way to get through those fights as quickly as you can, obviously.
Yeah. Trying to squeak out skipping a turn, or is it better to hold on to the MP or item that would otherwise be needed?
Exactly. But yeah, with our first victory in the sewers, we are now basically going back to our tower here and having a little chat about what happened and what we are going to do next. And this is also where we'll be introduced to J-Ster. Now, J-Ster is like this game's version of Triple Triad, or but instead of cards, you're basically using these tokens. And this is basically a tutorial fight, which is actually one of the harder ones to win, because if I don't go first here, I basically have very little chance of winning this. Okay, I didn't go first, but I am going first, but I didn't get the first token on the field, is what I'm trying to say here. So yeah, this is gonna be interesting. So let's see if I can make this happen somehow. It's not the end of the world if you don't win this, but if you do win it, you get an elixir. And as we all know, elixirs are pretty good. But for this game specifically, you little bastard. I think this should flip off. Okay, we still won somehow. Nice. So yeah, now I get the elixir. I will never use the elixir for the speedrun. It's not needed, but you can sell it for like 5,000 lumps, which is the game's currency. And that just makes, the money route in the beginning a little bit less stressful, because 5,000 is like quite a bit of cash in the beginning here.
It's always been frustrating that a lot of games make elixirs or super high tier items like that worth almost nothing. It's like, look, man, at least let me pick my poison here. Do I want cash or do I want healing?
Absolutely. Especially in this game, and we will see this once we get into the first, or we already were in the first dungeon with the sewers, but the first, I want to say, proper dungeon of the game, because status effects are a huge deal in this game. Maybe not poison, but a lot of the others. Before we go there, though, we do a little bit of a shopping trip. We want to buy like a couple of weapons for all of the characters that we're going to use here. So we want the Nove, I want a Mesothere, I want 2 Pervice shields, I want 3 shell shields, and then we want 2 silk caps and 2 circlers. And if you look at my money up there, I have like 580 left over, which is, one of these items costs like 300 or more, so we're cutting it a little bit close there, but I didn't need to sell the elixir at this point, at least. So that basically means we should be good, but depending on which enemy encounters you get in the sewers when you do all these fights, you can be a little bit short on money here. And that is when this can become a little bit dicey. Another effect of the ring power that we picked up on the sewers, and you just saw me use it there, is if you hit an enemy with this projectile, it actually freezes them in place and they won't move anymore, which is very handy to just freeze them in place and jump over them so you don't have to take that fight. Again, you can see all the enemies on screen. There are no random encounters. However, you don't exactly know which enemies you are going to face in that specific encounter because there are like a couple of different variations per area that you can run into. Now, obviously, we don't want to take any fights that we don't have to, so obviously we're going to try and skip a lot of them.
Would it be faster to turn off the overworld encounters via the menu, or can you not do that while you're in?
It might actually be, yes. To be honest, I don't think I've ever thought as far ahead to actually go ahead and try it out to see if it would be faster to toggle that on and off or not, but it is definitely something that might come into consideration for sure.
Yeah, that's the one downside of being the lone router, that sometimes you overlook some simple things for sure, or sometimes it's just it's a minor menu error. But the other thing too is it depends on how quickly the menu loads, how long it takes, because I'm sure there's some portions where it's just like better to stun them, and then other portions where you're
absolutely, like in the beginning it doesn't matter too much, I want to say, because the enemies are kind of weak as we saw, so you can get through them somewhat quickly. But especially later on in the game, like some encounters are really brutal, like because it's an RPG speedrun, we will be under-leveled for a lot of it, and the later enemies will just kick our butts.
I could see it being pretty catastrophic if you fall into the encounter and get a back attack.
Yes, that can absolutely end your day. What we did in the meantime here was that obviously, I equipped the weapons and armor that we bought. I switched my party around a little bit to this setup again because we are now doing a little bit of a grinding session. Because before we head into Pisca's Temple, which is like the next dungeon that we made our way through in this little swamp that we went through, we definitely need to become stronger because right at the entrance of the dungeon will be a boss fight. And if you're not prepared for that specific boss fight, it will just tear you apart. The reason being, as I alluded to earlier, status effects in this game are very powerful. And this particular boss, I don't know why. There is barely any enemy, even later in the game, that is able to do that. But he has an attack that can confuse your whole party. Now, I think we all know what a confusion status does. It basically makes you lose control of that character and they do whatever they want. And in this game, this lasts for 3 turns. So for 3 turns, you have a chance to not be able to do anything with your party. And I guess you can see where this is going. It's an absolute catastrophe when it happens to your group. So you want to try and finish that fight as quickly as you can.
We've got this.
No, sadly, you cannot change which character you're controlling in the overworld now. You will always be tied to Ulan.
Oh, that's
like, the lady we saw running around there.
That's a bit unfortunate with how striking the visual art is in this game.
Yes.
But I'd imagine if I had to look at it from a dev perspective, it was probably an amount of like, well, how much time do we want to spend on this? Especially for a smaller studio.
My turn.
I think this is the studio's second game, if I'm not mistaken. It's actually pretty interesting because their first game, and I haven't played it, but some of you might have, was the Super Neptunia RPG. That was actually the first game that they've worked on, and this is now their second game. And spoilers, they're working on their third. And I haven't played Super Neptunia myself because it's not necessarily like an IP that I'm personally interested in. So I can't comment on how good it is or not. But I think it's like quite the step up coming from that to this.
Neptunia does definitely have a pretty strong fan base, that's for sure. But it is definitely a waifu.exe game, so it doesn't appeal to everybody.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. Like I said, I haven't played it myself because I wasn't interested in the series so far. But honestly, having played so much of this game, I am kind of inclined to give it a go at some point.
Learned your lesson?
Anyway, what the other thing that I did, I actually talked to one of the NPCs in town, and I picked up a side quest, the Shattered Bracelet. Now, for this side quest, all we have to do was to defeat 10 enemies, which I have already done, and now I just have to go back to that NPC and turn the side quest in to get my rewards. The reason I did that was because every one of the 8 demigods, of the 8 playable characters, they have what is called a sage. And a sage is basically a person that, knows the powers of the demigods and kind of serves as their guide, because they only have this job for like 3 years before they die and pass on their powers, and the next one comes along, and the sages kind of are there to guide them along and transition the knowledge from one demigod to the other, yada yada yada. That is to say, in gameplay terms, they're basically glorified side quest givers. And at the start, you basically have to go through a mini chain of 2 side quests with each of the sages. I mean, you don't have to do this, but for every character, you have to go through this mini quest chain of 2 side quests before they open up a little bit more. And what happens a little bit later is we'll be able to change our characters' jobs. And once we select a new job for one of our main characters, that is when the sage will get new side quests. And we are very interested in those particular new side quests that open up later, which is why we try to knock out these first couple of side quests that they give us as quickly as we can, just so we don't have to, do a lot of running around later on for them. With that out of the way, you see, I'm still grinding here. What I am looking for is I want about 150 SP on Alasia. Now, Alasia is the character on the far right there. And you can see, like, in the very lower right corner of the screen where it says 70, and that is my SP. And I want 150 for her. So basically what I'm doing right now is I'm just going through the sewers and fighting these fights over and over again. It takes around, I want to say, 8 to 12 rounds of reloading this whole thing and going through these 4 fights to get the necessary 150 SP, which adds a little bit of time for sure, but it's also a little bit boring to watch. So instead, what we are going to do instead is I'm going to quickly close my game and open back up again. I could normally just load a save from within the game, but for whatever reason at the moment there is a bug. I've already contacted the developers about it. That makes it so if you load a save, you can't control or you can't access your menu anymore. So if you press the start button to go into the menu, your controls don't work. I don't know why this happens, but if you want to load a save at the moment from within the game, you have to, basically exit out of the game completely and then do your thing. But as you can see, we now have our 153 SP. We have the same group again. I just am here in Vetira instead of in the sewers. We've also completed the side quest for Ophern. So what I can do now is change my party to what we need for the next boss fight encounter, and then we will go to the Ascension tree and grab the abilities that we need. Now, one of them is Sharp for Alec, which makes it so when its HP is full, it increases its strength by 20%, which is pretty good to have, at the very start of your Ascension tree like that. And then we're gonna go ahead and grab a couple more abilities here. Now, these nodes are very valuable. You can see you can choose between either HP plus 40 or MP plus 40. And, Cress, before we chose this node, had like around 80 MP. Now she has 120. So we just increased her MP by 50%, which is huge for this early in the game, as you might imagine. And if you look at some of these other nodes, these are like really juicy stat increases. Like here you can increase either your strength, defense, magic, or magic defense by 18. Now, you have to keep in mind, if you level up, you probably increase all of these stats by 1 or maybe 2 or even 3 points. But just grabbing this single node increases one of these stats by 18. That is huge. And that is why we will be using mainly the Ascension tree to increase our the strength of our characters throughout the run. So let me just quickly go through this and grab the other things that we need here. I mean, I guess most of what I grab here is like pretty self-explanatory, like Omnifire, deals fire damage to all the enemies on screen and not just a single one. Then he also gets more MP and a little bit more magic attack because he is our magic caster. Then we got Eco here, also more MP. We got Clear, we got Omni Cure. And then he gets a massive increase of 100 HP. Now he had like 200 before that, now he has 300. And then we also go to Alec and give him the support ability. And now we go back to Viscous Temple, where we noped out of basically a little bit earlier here. And like I said before, this next encounter, and just making sure I have the right suffix, this confusion ring here is very important. You know, I just explained that the boss that we're going to face can confuse your party, and with a confused guard ring, obviously Dagmar cannot be confused like ever at all. He's immune to that status effect, and he's our main damage dealer, so obviously, you know, you want him to be able to deal damage whenever he can. So let's see how this guy will treat me here.
So you mentioned the big issue is confusion. Does hitting yourself knock you out of confusion, or is it just one of those?
It does, yes.
Okay.
But only with physical attacks.
At least it's not omnipotent confusion.
No.
You're going to have to stay here, buddy.
No, lucky enough. No, you have the option to also hit your own party members with attacks, so that makes it a little bit more bearable. But, you know, if your whole party is confused, chances of that happening are still pretty low. Now, he will always use Omni Water on his first turn, which is totally fine by me, even though it does deal a lot of damage, as you saw. And that is also why we want to get Omni Cure on Ecos, so he can actually, you know, heal the whole party after this attack. And now we just, hit him a bunch more. We need one more turn with Dagmar, and this fight should be over. Here it comes. This is Rolling Mind. This is the attack. And as you can see, like, everybody is confused about Dagmar. You can see in the lower right with this purplish icon with a 3 underneath it. That means the character is confused, and it hit all of them. Again, it has a chance to confuse everybody. It doesn't automatically confuse everybody. It has a chance, and of course it did all of them. Because why wouldn't it? Okay, we made it through the fight. Everything is fine. However, this is not the worst thing that will happen to us, because there is a mid-boss in this particular temple that is even worse than this guy that we just fought. She will appear in a couple of rooms. Her name is Mother Fauna. And not only does she basically have the same ability, you know, to confuse your whole team, she also has the ability to stun your whole team. Stun is basically the same thing. It stuns a character for 3 turns, and she can use it on your whole party at once. And if that wasn't enough, she also comes with 4 ads.
Oof.
Now let that sink in a bit. We are basically, you know, in the first real dungeon of the game, and we're thrown into this deep end. So, the game is hard. Game is hard. There she is. She uses focus. That is totally fine by me. As long as she doesn't stun or confuse, I am fine with whatever she does. I mean, her ads can also stun or confuse you. However, they can only do it on one character. So we are looking pretty stable. Yeah, okay. We went through this. Absolutely no problem. This was basically the perfect opening to this fight. I have absolutely no qualms with this. So what we're going to do here, she's also weak against lightning again, so we're going to use Nyx Blade. And I don't have Omni Nyx, but I have Omni Fire, which in this case is basically as good, so we just get rid of all of her ads, like, right out the go. And now the fight, well, it's still, you know, she can still stun my whole party and then do whatever. But at least we are looking pretty stable here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and fight her. As you can see, Dagmar is still the MVP when it comes to damage. And she can, of course, you know, resummon her Earth as well, which shouldn't be too big of an issue, actually. But Crest should be able to take care of that, no problem. This basically, you know, depends on how many ads does she keep summoning again. Is she stunning your party or not? Okay, she can heal us fine. It only heals like 500 or so, which is basically nothing here. And then we just knock her around to probably kill her once Dagmar's next turn comes around. Yeah, I should be able to kill her. Okay, perfect. That was a really good encounter. These things can go absolutely south very quickly. Like when I, played this in preparation for this, she just opened the fight with like a stun on my whole party, and I was just sitting there for 3 turns where like 5 enemies were just, knocking me over. It was not fun.
Sounds like it's a pretty good game overall, but the early game balance could use a slight rework for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, like no other enemy, or there are some enemies that can stun your whole party, but they are way later in the game, and it rarely ever happens. So I'm really confused why they made these first couple of boss fights so hard. Anyway, we now picked up the water power, so we have our physical projectile, but also the water power, which lets us basically transfer water from one point to another, and that is how we made the water rise with little platforms, so we can make our way over to the other side of this little lake. And then we'll just make our way through the rest of this dungeon here, which is basically a lot of going right until we get to the exit. Stun this enemy. Once we are here, we're now going left. And this is actually the scene that stumped me the most when I came here during my first playthrough of this game. And, I saw this hammer, but I had, like, no idea what to do here. And I kept running through this dungeon, like, oh my god, I know there's something here, but what do I do? And what you do is you jump on it. For some reason, it just didn't occur to me in the beginning to just jump on the hammer to make the doorway appear. But now you know it.
If the hammer had been like sideways, I could see jumping on it as being like a logical, but like being upright like that I could understand the what's going on here moment for sure.
Okay, now we are at the end of this temple, and you can see we are fighting a nun again, but this time in his powered up form. So he is a bit stronger than he was before. And I'm just going to make sure here... What does it take? 34. Oh, no. Okay, he needs a bit of a refresh. Because there's actually a glitch here that the only other runner other than me that runs this game has found. Because you can see this little red mushroom on the ground there. There's like a couple steps to the right of me here. And at about the right end of this mushroom is where the fight trigger for the boss fight is. Now, if I am able... Yeah. You heard that? Like, I went to the menu and we also heard this little, whoosh sound that means that we got into an encounter. And that means is that the game is now in a glitch state where this encounter doesn't trigger because, it triggered while I was in the menu. So the game is a little bit confused now. Like, okay, what is happening? You're supposed to be in the menu, but you're not in the menu. So I can't load this fight. And that is essentially how we skip this whole boss fight, which is really good because this is probably the hardest fight in the game. I'm not going to lie. Like, I was very afraid of getting to this point in the speedrun when I did my first couple of runs and I didn't know about this. So I am very glad we were able to find this. Or, the other runner was able to find this and show it off in his runs.
Nice.
Now, since we are a little bit of a glitch state, we are limited in what we can do. However, luckily, we can still enter this gateway. And since there is a cutscene happening after that, you can kind of see, like, in the background, the game is a little bit confused. Okay, what's going on at the moment? Like, right, this isn't supposed to be normal. But once we get through these couple of cutscenes here, the game luckily reorientates itself, and we can just continue playing while having essentially skipped that boss fight. But all the rewards that we should have gotten from it, after the fight, like, obviously we lose out on the experience and whatnot, but we still got the job crests, and that is like the most important thing. Because, and I'm just going to decrease the music volume here again for just a second. What we now acquired, and you can see that in the lower right corner, is main job crests. And you get 2 of them every time you complete one of these temples. Most of them are required for main story progression, and they obviously allow you to change your job. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put Ulan back in. We're going to put Arpeggio back in. I'm going to page attack my Crest, right? Crest goes there. And then we are going to, well, that's the thing, right? So we can now choose a job for Ulan, or basically any other character. You can use these crests on any character you want, but only for their main job so far. And you get a selection between 3 jobs. Now, these are the only jobs that Ulan will ever have access to. There are more jobs in the game, like warrior, shaman, hunter, or whatnot, but these are the 3 jobs that she has access to, and she will only ever have access to these 3 jobs. Now, the main job is the most important pick. You can have a main job, a sub job, or a support job, or even a base job. Like the base jobs are like the unique jobs for that character. For example, Ulan so far was a captain, right? And only she will ever have access to the captain role. Same as Arpeggio, who's the only one ever has access to a thief role. However, these jobs are shared between the characters. So I think Dagmar is the other one who can be a black mage. And we will actually go ahead and make Ulan a black mage, because she is actually the best magic caster in the game. As ludicrous as that may sound, it is not Dagmar. No, it is actually Ulan. And why, I will get to in a little bit. But we will go ahead and grab MP Generator and Isis. Now, this game has 4 tiers of spell levels. You know, like you have in your Final Fantasy, you have Fire, Fyra, and Firaga. In this game, you have Fire, I think it's Fyra, then Firius. Oh god, I'm forgetting. Fyrus, and then Fyrima. So Fire, Fyra, Fyrus, and then Fyrima. And Isis is basically a level 3 ice spell. So we didn't even get the level 1 or level 2 ice spells. Now we are already up to level 3. And I guess you can kind of already see where this is going. Same with Arpeggio. We will make him a Dark Knight. And he will learn Defense Break, Godi, and Omniforcior. Now, Omniforcior is very interesting because it's a force spell. Force spells basically deal non-elemental damage to enemies that scale off your strength stat. So we kind of want to go ahead, he's a Dark Knight, obviously we'll get a lot of strength and stuff like that, which makes it really good on a Dark Knight, and especially Arpeggio, because Arpeggio is naturally very fast, like he's probably the fastest character in your group, and him having an Omni spell that hits the whole enemy team at once, oh, it's glorious. Well, let me tell you that. So let me just go ahead and crack up the music again so we can hear a bit, and we'll go to Central Plaza. And we will go to Oxen Valley. And again, there are noises in town. And, well, get accustomed to what is going to happen right now here. So Arpeggio will laugh, and he will just completely obliterate the enemy team. And that is basically also why we did that little grind in the sewers, right? Obviously, we first wanted to be able to survive these 2 boss fights that we did against Anon and Mother Fauna, but we also wanted to have enough SP to be able to immediately grab these abilities once we were able to select our main jobs. So since we are in town, we're just gonna wait around a little bit for Arpeggio to refill his MP between fights, because we don't have a lot of ethers at the moment.
Oh, MP naturally regenerates? That's nice.
Yes, but only as long as you are in a town. So it doesn't regenerate when you're out on a field. But when you're in town, yeah, everything just regenerates, which makes, you have a little bit of town time here, but I don't think it's that long. I mean, it's like a tick, like every second or so. Nope. The wrong ability.
So when you switch classes, I'd assume the stats change over, right?
Yes.
It doesn't really matter that she's in the front row right now as a black mage?
As far as I'm aware, it doesn't, no. Like, I haven't seen, from, say, Final Fantasy, right, where, the character that's in front has a higher chance of getting hit by anything. I haven't noticed that in this game. It might be there, but even if it is, I haven't noticed it to a degree where I could, justify changing the party around.
It's more so just they're in combat. There you go.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I haven't seen any reason to switch Ulan into the back row or anything. Okay, we're into our next boss fight. This is going to be Argon, and this is basically the strat that will happen for a lot of time. We will use Defense Break. Defense Break decreases an enemy's physical and magical resistance by 30% each.
Ooh.
So we'll hit the boss for that. He will always use Omni-Mute on his first turn, and everybody got muted. That's a bit of a problem, actually. What I can do is I can focus with you. And I will talk about what focus does in a little bit. And then we will just unmute Ulan here. And again, Ulan has a level 3 ice spell. This guy has 9,000 HP.
Uh-oh.
And we now
I'm seeing
deal
things.
about 3,800. Which, you know, is maybe not as much as you might have thought in the beginning, but it still is quite a bit.
It's a third.
And I guess I can just go ahead and hit you a bit. The downside of this is, you know, Ulan doesn't have a lot of MP at the moment. She has about 100 MP, and Isis costs her about 80, I think it is. So we basically have to feed her ethers now to get that up again, so she can use it again. A little bit unfortunate that my whole party got muted because they have a natural chance to resist that. But yeah, we still made pretty quick work of this game anyway.
Where could he be?
Sounds like a lot of this speedrun hinges on getting hit with a status ailment or not, unfortunately.
At least in the beginning, yes. Like, that is also like a thing that I found really interesting once I started writing that. It feels to me like the further you get into the game, the less status ailments, at least the bosses, will use. So especially later on in the game, or rather, you will get more items to mitigate status effects. So yeah, it doesn't matter as much anymore. But definitely in the beginning, yeah, you are kind of at the mercy of the enemies. Okay.
The patterns, whatever they give out.
Okay, didn't want to do that. There we go. I was kind of stuck there for a second and I wasn't quite sure, and I'm stuck again. Huh? Okay, I've never had that happen before. Whenever I talk to an NPC now, I can't move. But if I just challenge them to a J-Ster match...
Wow, have such peace.
Interesting.
We're just finding all sorts of stuff today. Hey, you want to play dice cards? Oh yeah, no, we'll let you go. But you must be
Okay,
here.
but this guy doesn't want to play cards, sadly. Okay, I guess we just have to go ahead and log the autosave because I've never seen that happen before.
You soft locked yourself. What are you doing?
See, this is exactly the reason why we didn't want to do a speedrun today.
Oh, what a cursed experience. Hold on. No. I'm in, and that's never happened before. Moment, we're gonna do this.
Absolutely. I literally have never seen this happen before at all, and I've been playing this game on and off for 3 years. But this is the first time this particular thing has happened to me. What in blazes? Anyway, yeah, this is the town of the cat people. This is where Dagmar is from, and wanted to visit family, blah blah blah. Doesn't quite go as he wants to, and we will go ahead into the weapon shop. No, not yet. I'm a little bit ahead of myself here. We'll go to the item shop, and this is where we will go ahead and buy up to 50 ethers around about, and a couple, not that many. A couple ether pluses, because now that Arpeggio is basically our encounter clearer, if you will, it also takes a lot of MP for him. Like, he has about 140, 150-ish, and Omniforcio takes about 53 of that, so he has like 2 to 3 casts, and then he's basically out of juice. So we will basically turn him into an ether addict now, because we have to grind a little bit more to be able to grab a couple more abilities for the next couple of boss fights. But first of all, we will make our way through this what's it called? The Blazing Fields right here.
That's interesting. A lot of games, like, ethers are fairly rare and or extremely expensive or limited in the amount you can buy. In this one, you could just buy half a stack and give me 50. That's all I got. I got 20 in stock. Give me 50.
Yeah, it's certainly, part due to the grinding that we did at the start in the sewers that we have a bit of disposable income. Like, it's definitely not that we are that rich at the moment. Like, if you look at the top right there, we have about, 7,500 after buying like 40-ish ethers or so. And at this point in the game, the weapons start costing like in the thousands. So we are not necessarily hurting for money, but it's not like, we can spend it nearly willy. You still have to have a little bit on an eye on it. But yeah, you are right. It's definitely, and that is, things that can happen because after every fight, I basically have to chuck at least one ether at Arpeggio, and it's sometimes like easy to just go ahead and completely, forget about doing that. And you start an encounter and you can't use the move, and you're like, oh.
I mean, it's an extremely nice quality of life because a lot of times, like, your black mages get to do almost nothing because you have no way of really like healing them efficiently, quickly, and cheaply, to the point where it's like, well, I'm just not going to use my black mage until we see the boss. Yeah, but this makes it so that you can have very efficient fights, especially with a 30% recovery rate instead of 10 points.
That is also a thing that like really surprised me because I was speedrunning this game actually during Quest for Glory 6 last year, and I had the developers for the game with me on commentary, so I was actually able to chat a little bit with them and ask them how they came to be and design some of the aspects of the game. And one thing that's just stuck in my mind is like, especially with the combat mechanics of this game that I actually haven't talked about. Maybe we should do that. But basically what their answer was is they kind of were orientating themselves along the lines of Shin Megami Tensei. If you know the press turn system, you kind of start to understand where they're coming from with this. Because let's quickly go through the battle UI, actually. The most important things are the numbers in the top left and top right corner. In the top right corner, the yellowish ones where the 1 is, those are my focus points, and the blue ones on the left side, those are the enemy's focus points. And what do you do with the focus points? Well, if you see in the bottom middle there, these black crystal kind of things, if I select an ability, I can then toggle these things on and off. If you see, if I toggle it on plus 50%, I lose a focus point in the top right corner because it is now underneath there in this little crystal thing. I can toggle that on and off how I want to. And I can use up to 4 focus points on any of my actions. And what the 50% basically means is this ability, if I use it now, is empowered by 50%. So, for example, a damage spell will now deal 50% more damage. And that gets increased by stat modifiers, by enemy weaknesses, and so on and so forth. Now, if you use 4 of those focus points, you empower that move by 200%, which is a massive increase in damage. And that is what allows us to, tear through these fights as quickly as we do. And that also ties into the elemental weaknesses of the enemies, because if you hit an enemy weakness, you gain 2 focus points. If you hit a resistance, you lose a focus point. If you hit a nullify, I think you lose 2 focus points. And if you hit an absorption, you lose 5. So obviously you want to be, I forgot to use an ether again. You want to be very careful or very strategic how you play around this. But if you know an enemy's weaknesses, and how to exploit it, you can, it's basically like a snowball effect, right? You hit them with a weakness, you gain focus points, so you can hit his weakness even harder on the next turn, and so on and so forth. But obviously the reverse is also true, because how that works for your party is, if you look at your equipment, what an armor actually does is it dictates what your character is weak or strong to. For example, the Hessian robe that Ulan is wearing, it makes her resistant to water, but it makes her weak to lightning. Now, if I were to equip a different armor on her, now obviously it would increase her defense and magic defense a little bit, but when I say a little bit, I mean a little bit. Like, an armor only increases your defense by like a point or 2. I mean, obviously, stronger armors later on in the game will do a little bit more, but it's not that much, right? It's more important which resistances or weaknesses the armor actually gives your character, which is a really interesting thing. Like, if you are used to, your Final Fantasies, your Breath of Fires or something, it is something you can very easily overlook, and then you can get hit by a weakness attack from a boss, and he just completely obliterates you, and you have no idea what just happened.
We've got this.
And I forgot to use an ether again.
Yeah, that's definitely an SMT thing too, because I think the MC has Magatama system in a lot of different games that manipulate your resistances, nullifications, and weaknesses.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Once you put it that way, I was like, oh yeah, I'm seeing it now.
Yeah. That is also the thing, right? Like, I've been speedrunning that game for like 2 years or so until we had that discussion, and I was always wondering, okay, where did they come from with this system? Why are they doing it that way? And then he said, oh yeah, we're trying to do SMT. And I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense all of a sudden. I can totally see where they were coming from, the system, and why it feels so good to hit a weakness, and why some fights can go by in the blink of an eye, and why others can be an absolute drag if an enemy, for example, has absolutely no weaknesses whatsoever. So you have no way to build up your focus points, to hit them even harder, and it's just an absolute drag to get through fights like that. But if you can hit the weakness, it goes by very, very smoothly.
So it's much like SMT, where knowledge is power, and it'll make your play experience a lot more interesting.
Absolutely.
That's cool. So you've been mentioning the focus points. Do you start each battle with a single point?
Yes.
Okay.
I think there is like an item that you can get very late game that makes you start with more, but I have to admit it's been very long since I played the game casually, so I'm not exactly sure anymore.
Hard to get to
but I think
things.
So. Yeah.
Because I know a lot of games like this have really strong accessories, but they're like hidden behind an hour, 2 hours of side questing minimum, and you're just like, yeah, that's not worth it to speed run.
Like, there are actually some things that are worth side questing for. You've seen me do that in the beginning, right? Where we did this little quest chain, and that will keep on going here. Because there is actually one side quest that is very much worth it to do in the speedrun, because it's kind of along the path that we're going anyway. And we can pick up some very nice equipment for it, or from it later on in the game.
Yeah.
However, at this point, like I said before, this is basically our second grinding session, where we have to go through this field here and do a couple of these encounters, because this area in particular has like the best enemy encounter to SP ratio. You saw me a couple of times, fight these 8 little bugs. And I explained that in the beginning, that every enemy that you defeat usually gives you 1 SP, right? So if you can fight 8 enemies in one encounter, that's 8 SP that you're getting. And that is basically the most that you can get at any point, at this point in the game. And that is why we use this area to grind here for just a little bit. Another thing you might have noticed, especially here, is that, this area can have 2 different weather effects. Like right now, if you see, we have the sandstorm. You can see that in the top middle there. And if I go back, it is now sunny. And weather effect is something that has it's basically a coin flip which weather effect an area will have. And it's not only visual, like the weather effect has an impact on the encounters that you're getting. Like, roughly speaking, if it is a sunny weather, good weather effect, you will get encounters with a lot of weak enemies. That is why we want sunny weather here, so we can get this encounter with the 8 bugs, because again, it is the encounter with the most SP that we can get. But if you are in bad weather effect, like the sandstorm, you will usually get encounters with fewer enemies that are stronger. So for the grinding purposes, obviously, we want to be able to get as many encounters as we can during sunny weather, because it's simply more efficient for us. We don't want to fight the big and tanky enemies, because we get the same amount of SP from them anyway. So it's really not worth the investment, so to speak. Let's just feed up Pedro another ether. And I usually have to do about, I want to say 5 runs here. Yeah, we are looking to have 440 SP on the last year. Again, you can see that in the lower right corner there. And we are at about 272, which kind of sounds still miles away, but if you just go through this quickly and efficiently, it doesn't take that long. I mean, it is still a bit of a grind, right?
Yeah.
Because what would be an RPG speedrun without a little bit of grinding at some point? But it's definitely not as bad as you might think that it is.
I mean, luckily, since it's just throw ethers, throw spell, throw ethers, throw spell, easy.
It's battle time.
And especially, I think, after this encounter, we should have enough. If we have 120 on our page, yeah, we have exactly 120. Because this is where we can speed up things a little bit. So if you can see in the lower right corner, right, Arpeggio has 125 MP at the moment. If we grab this node, he now has 435. So we basically quadrupled his MP. That means if I now use an ether at him, he regains 130 MP all of a sudden. So that means, bit of quality of life here. I don't have to use an ether after every fight anymore, but only after every single round of grinding that we're doing here, which makes things a lot easier and obviously quite a bit faster. And with that said, I'm just going to exit out of the game again because I'll need to load a save. Again, we have a little bit of a bug going on at the moment where if you load a save from within the game, you can't use your menu. So we will now go to Oasis and just skip having me to do this grind right there. So we're now back in town, and as you can see, we have the 447 SP on Alasia. We're on level 12. And back in town, we are going to restock on a couple of things. Oh, missed the NPC. Oh, no, I don't want potions. I want about 10 Omni potions, a couple of Omni potions plus. And then, again, ethers to around 50 or a couple more. And then we go ahead and buy some more equipment.
It's so weird with the ethers doing like 30%. Their restorative property gets higher.
Yes.
Later in the game, and they're still cheap.
Exactly. Yeah. They really wanted you to use items and stuff in this game, which I kind of can embrace that, because like in a lot of RPGs, I feel like you're basically never using items because they are too precious to use. And you're just stockpiling them for situations that will never come. And in this game, you're like, no, you can even buy elixirs later in the game if I remember correctly. So you can just use them. You have money probably anyway.
Yeah, even in Rebirth, we get like 4 elixirs just given to us throughout the course of the game, and I'll forget to use them in a run when I'm in a dire position. I'm like, oh, that's right, I have elixirs. Oops.
Yeah.
Well, that could have gone easier.
And I really, do like that this game isn't that way. That kind of really encourages you to go out there and use everything that you have at your disposal, because guess what? The game is actually not that easy.
I mean, yeah.
However, the way we make it a little bit easier is what you can see here, and why we choose Ulan to be our mage is because of this passive ability, 1-for-1. And like it says, it decreases her strength by 30, but it increases her magic by 30 in return. So, and only she has, because it's in her base job, in her unique job, only she ever has access to that, and that makes her the best mage, because Dagmar never has access to this for some reason, even though he starts out to be the sorcerer, which is again another weird choice, I want to say, on the developer's part, but I guess it is what it is.
Balance is always a very difficult thing to get right without a lot of testers and feedback.
Absolutely.
From people that are really world-wise with dev stuff. But it also makes speedruns funner, too, in some instances.
That is definitely the thing, right? Like, I think a lot of people, or I can imagine at least, that a lot of people who played this probably made Dagmar into the Black Mage and Ulan into the Guardian, which is the better defensive job, because, she starts out as a captain with a shield and a lance. So you're kind of thinking, okay, this is probably my tank character, so I'm going to make her more tanky, and he's a mage, so I'm going to make him more magey, magic orientated. But if you're playing it, optimally, at least in a speedrun sense, that's definitely not the way that you want to go with this.
Yeah, sometimes the visual design will inform how a casual player plays the game, which is a really interesting paradigm, because especially with this, how striking the the design of each of the characters is and how much they just look good. But like you look at their basic outfit, you're like, oh, she's got a shield and a sword, so she's supposed to do pokey things. Got it.
But not in the speedrun, she's not. But yeah, basically, did a couple, or we grabbed more stats in the Ascension tree right now, a couple more abilities, and we are now strong enough to continue on with the game into the next boss fight, which will be these 4 gentlemen here.
We've got this.
And what we're going to do now is, of course, Arpeggio is going to use his Omniforcer again to start weakening them up a little bit. Obviously, the guy in the back, he's their white mage, their healer. And we're going to focus on him a little bit there. Build up our FP. Then we have Omni Ice, and as you can see, like 2 of them. Oh yeah, this is the focus point system works on a per enemy level. So since I'm hitting 2 enemies that are weak to ice, I will gain 4 FP. However, since one of them is also resistant to that, that will obviously subtract 1. So I should gain 3 FP out of this when I use this. As you can see, we have 3 FP after that. And can you actually just hit him? So he does? Yeah, okay, it works. So I guess she did a little bit of poking there because our ice spell didn't quite get rid of all of them.
Yeah. There's no reason to cast a spell when it's 1 physical attack away.
Exactly, especially because they are so pricey on her. Like again, she has like 176 MP now, and a single cast of her level 3 magic spells costs like 80. So that's about half of her MP gone in a single cast. And again, we have enough ethers to get through it, but why risk it if you can just poke him with the staff a little bit and be done with it anyway.
I guess it seems like a majority of like your strength straight up comes from the skill tree as opposed to levels, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. But that is also the thing, right? Normally if you play this casually and you don't grind at the points that I grinded at, you will be nowhere near the strength level that I would be now. Because obviously, the game does not expect you to basically grab nothing from the base job Ascension tree of a character and go straight into a main job tree to grab all these powerful things. Because if you start up the game, you might not even know that that is a thing that happens later. Because, these things cost quite a few SP, right? Like this costs 90 or 140 SP a pop, and again you only get like 1 SP per killed enemy, so you have to kill a lot of enemies to accumulate the points to be able to afford these nodes that give you the abilities and whatnot.
I'd assume there's,
so we're definitely
no
playing
way to
around
like unpoint normally. Then it's you put it in, it's there forever.
Yes. There are exceptions to that a little bit. Like normally, it's completely right what you said. If you grab one of these nodes, then they're locked in forever. The only exception to that rule is like the stat nodes over here. The ones where you can choose which stat you want to increase. For example, this node here, I chose to grab 16 points in strength for Arpeggio. However, I can basically destroy this node and grab a different stat. Like if I choose, hey, I don't want this node to increase strength from anymore, I want this node now to increase defense instead, I can do that. So you're not locked into that. You are locked into the abilities that you grab and the passives, but not the stats that you can get. So even, if you've grabbed like one that increases your HP or MP, you can still switch that around later if you want to.
Okay. Interesting.
So, you don't have to be afraid to make a wrong choice, at least when it comes to that. Okay, we are into our next boss fight. Now, you might remember this guy. We already fought him once in the city a little bit earlier. And this fight is kind of the same, kind of not. Like, once again, we will start out with defense breaking him. He will use Omni-Mute on our team. Oh, Crest goes first. Okay, that's good. Then we can use Ice Blade on him, grab a couple more FP. Now he will use Omni-Mute. We want to see if Oolong gets muted. Okay, everybody got muted again. That's kind of bad, but we do have remedies for that. We can use it on Oolong. That gets rid of the silence, and then we can use Iceus again.
This status luck has been pretty rough.
Yeah, Definitely has been. Okay, 10,000 damage. That's the first phase done. So he doesn't immediately die this time. He is a little bit more tanky this time around. What we can do here, use another remedy on Cress, actually. So you can use Ice Blade again. Okay, he mutes again. And Ulan got muted again. Perfect. Okay, it doesn't matter because she can still use Ice Blade because Dagmar will go before Ulan, so he can throw a remedy on her instead. And then we can use another Isis because Ulan now has enough MP to use 2 of them before she needs a refill. Okay, 12,000 damage. Now he goes into phase 3 and his resistances changes now. He is no longer weak to ice, but he is weak to physical attacks. So luckily we have our Pager in our group who can just deal a bunch of physical damage with that attack. Now he will blind us in order to cancel that. Doesn't matter too much because the thing is, if you use FP on a move, it doesn't only increase the damage that attack will do, but it also increases your accuracy, for example. So doesn't still, you still have a chance to miss or whatever, but using FP on that when a character is blinded will definitely increase your chances to hit. So we will use that, hit them. Now, obviously, we have 2 mages, Dagmar and Ulan, who don't do a lot at this point in the fight anymore. So what we can do is we can switch them out for other physical attackers, just like that. The thing is, if you switch out your characters during a fight, they will basically skip their action for that turn. Now, I used Ulan, specifically Ulan, because she was the slowest of my characters in that previous group, to switch out the characters, because I know when Ulan has had her turn, the next round starts, so the 2 characters I just switched in can immediately go as soon as, that turn comes, or the action comes around in this turn. So you want to be a little bit strategic with that. Even though, I had to attack the enemy with Dagmar, it didn't deal a lot of damage, but it still gave me FP because the boss is weak to physical attacks. And yeah, we are now in the 4th phase of the fight.
This ends now.
And we'll just basically burn him down here with our physical orientated characters. Like you can see, we deal a lot of damage with all of those.
Turn now.
I think, Cress should definitely be able to kill this guy. And there we go. Now, the neat thing is, even though I changed my character or my party in the fight, it still switches it back to the party that I had initially going into it. So I don't have to rearrange my party now. Now, one interesting thing at this point specifically is Eco, the little fish guy here. You can see that here. He's no longer in the party because he has been kidnapped by one of the enemies. This is the only point in the game where one of your characters will ever leave the party. So, you don't have to worry too much about the levels not matching up anymore, or you not being able to use your favorite character or whatever it is, because you will basically always have access to all of your characters, which, again, is appreciated.
This ends now.
Yeah, I can't say that I didn't reset on Final Fantasy 1 a few different times as a kid. No, they must all be the same level. Mm-hmm. I cannot tolerate them not being the same level.
Yep.
No stone here. Never.
I mean, to be fair, while he is away, Eco at the moment does not gain any experience or whatnot, so he will lag behind a little bit, if you fight a lot in this dungeon. But he will also get him halfway through again, so he won't be missing out on much. But if you were to go back and grind now, Eco would miss out on all of that, which would be that great, because he's actually a quite useful character.
I was going to say, we've only seen a few party members. It's there's a few questions I was going to ask and you answered all of them, but it does seem like right now we're hyper-focusing on this party. I guess you kind of pivot throughout the entire game.
Yes, that is the one thing that I really like that I was able to do is route in almost all of the characters at one point or another. The only character that I have found absolutely no use for is Alasia. Her base job is basically your summoner. Like, she's able to summon the Astria, like these elemental beings, as a summon. It's basically works like Final Fantasy X, where the summon overtakes your whole group. So, your whole group gets switched out for the summon, and then you can use the summon to, use their abilities and whatnot.
4 bodies is better than 1.
And I just never found this useful. Because, we've talked about how the battle system works a little bit. And the great detriment that the summons in this game have is they can only use abilities, or when they use abilities, they drain your FP. So not only do you have to use FP to summon them, you will also, keep using your FP to use their abilities. And the damage you get out of the abilities that they have is so much less than what your characters are able to do if you've built them like we built them in the speedrun. So I just never saw the point to them. Another interesting thing with the summons is actually, if you use them in the beginning of the game, they are like quite literally rubbish. However, they gain more abilities the higher your levels are. So they actually kind of grow along with you. And I think that is actually something that a lot of people overlook when they play this game, because, they get their first summon. They try it out. It's kind of is rubbish. It only has like 1 or 2 abilities. It basically does, or it nearly doesn't do anything, and then they just never use it again. And that is kind of, the problem with this system, because they do get more powerful later on. It's just, at least in the speedrun, they never grow to a level where they become useful to use them. At least, to my knowledge.
I mean, I've run into that a lot with speedrunning, where you use a thing and you're like, this is useless. Why would I use it? Mm-hmm. And then, like, outside of looking at it critically, especially with something like that where they grow with you, makes it kind of hard to gauge their usefulness.
Absolutely. But you can kind of see why we wanted Ulan to be a mage and grab this ice spell, because we are in a fire area at the moment. Almost all of the enemies, or especially like the big enemies, like the bosses, are weak to ice, and she just shreds through all of them. And we get our third ring power here, which is the fire ring power, which we can use to burn away barricades like that.
It's battle time.
Now, the reason I'm still doing the fights in here is the way that I've routed it is like, yes, we do have these very concentrated grinding sessions. But I found that, to be quite a bit boring to only, grind there. But you also get like very little experience and especially money out of those fights that we do grind. So I kind of routed it in that we take the fights that are along the way in the dungeons. Not all of the dungeons, but at least the first couple where we can, quickly get through the fights with the abilities that we have. To even it out a little bit, so you don't have to just like stand in one spot or grind in one spot, but you can also, advance in the game a little bit and grab stuff along the way as you need it, because it's not that much slower to take the fights here compared to the grinding spots that we use. And it also just gets rid of the enemies that are in your way. So if you were to try and dodge these fights and you would fail, you would then get grabbed into a fight that you might not want to do, and that will lose your time.
Yeah, it's definitely a nuanced thing. It takes a lot of timing to figure out. Like, you have to go, okay, well, how much time do I spend on doing an extra round of this versus turning off the encounters and just running through this area? How does it affect my money? How does it affect my SP? How does it affect the XP? There's a lot of things that go into routing RPGs that make it an extremely complex process.
Yes, absolutely. And that is also the reason why, I'm always trying to, I don't want to say convince people, but kind of nudge them to try this game out and maybe even give the speedrun a try, because it's really fun to speedrun this because, again, it's like very fast paced aside from the grinding sessions that we do. We have a bit of platforming to do, so it doesn't, grow stale. Whereas, at least when I watch speedruns of especially like older titles, sure, they are also movement based, but it's just, like going in a direction, holding down the run button, and that is that. Here you have, a couple puzzles you have to do. You have a bit of movement tech to it, especially later on when we unlock more abilities. So it's always, there's always like something that's going on here. And then the fights are also pretty fast paced, right? Like the battle animations are kind of short. You don't have your big Knights of the Round Table animations or anything like that. That takes like minutes to get through. It's all kind of like snappy and easy to get through at that point.
I mean,
but what I'm trying to get at, just let me finish that thought, is that I routed this on my own, and this is the first speedrun that the first RPG that I've run and routed myself. So there are definitely maybe things that aren't as optimal as they could be. So, if people are interested in doing this or are more experienced in routing RPGs than I am, feel free to reach out and give this a try yourself.
Yeah, that's one of the more fun things with RPGs is working together towards things. There's plenty of RPGs that have been solo routed, but it's definitely enjoyable to work with other people.
Absolutely.
Speaking from more from doing Remake 16 Rebirth and routing a lot of Remake, it's really easy to overlook stuff, and then when you look at somebody else and you're like, why wasn't I doing that?
Exactly.
And then you see the really, really, really well routed stuff, and you're like, how did you even come up with that? What? You can do that?
Yeah, it's like the thing, you get kind of blinded, or you get blind to stuff after a while when you've done it for I don't know how long, or
you kind of
there's just things that one person sees that another person doesn't, and vice versa. So it's always good to have more people doing it.
Yeah. It can be as simple as somebody just looking over notes and be like, hey, why do you menu here? What do you mean? I mean, you menu later and there's no fights, right? Oh, yeah, why do I menu there? And then sometimes it can be like, well, yeah, the boss is weak to this, but what if you just poke once instead? Or something like that. Sorry about that. I had a little bit of an issue with one of the cameras. We're trying to get that fixed up. There we go.
No worries.
There we go.
Right, I think we're back.
Yep.
Cool.
You're good to go.
Yeah, sorry about that. Short technical hiccup, as they do happen.
Yeah, that's the one downside, sort of, with digital over physical. Usually with the physical stuff, we get to test it thoroughly and ahead of time. But that doesn't stop it from breaking.
No worries. I don't think any of us has ever really experienced an event that never had any technical hiccup whatsoever. Or at least I haven't.
I'm pretty sure that is a fantasy that we always want to happen, but it never does.
Probably. Okay, we we have gone through Ari's temple, was it? Yes. Resolved the issues there. We are now back in town, and we are now talking to Ophern again, the little guy whose side quest we are currently doing. And he has a couple of follow-up quests for us, so I'll talk to him again. And boom. There we go. And then we're just gonna do a little spiel here where, you might have caught up to the thing already, is that basically how each chapter starts out, your characters are talking in town and something happens and then you have to go to a different quarter in town and resolve the issues there. And this time we are in Zeft Heights doing our things, killing more enemies that somehow have snuck into town. We still don't know why or how. But they are still absolutely no problem for Arpeggio and Omniforciore. Because that ability is, you're still basically not supposed to have a level 3 spell at this point, or even a level 2 Omni spell. So they are still holding up quite well. However, don't worry, there will come a point in the run that is actually not too far off, where this strategy just won't be feasible anymore, where the enemies are just too strong for this ability to one-shot them. it's still useful, because it deals a good amount of damage to the enemies, but it just won't one-shot them anymore. And that actually puts us into so much trouble that it's simply not worth it to engage in those fights whatsoever. So there will be like a hard fall off for Arpeggio and this strategy in particular very shortly. But for now, it still works, and we're getting into the next boss fight, which is against Take. Usual strategy of using defense break to lower his physical and magical defense. Then we will focus with Eco to generate a focus point. We will use Dagmar to use hit his weakness, so we get even more focus points. And then we just use Ulan again with his weakness and 4 focus points to completely eradicate this boss.
Don't underestimate us.
Yeah, because the focus point kind of reminds me of Bravely Default a little bit, where you brave or default to build them to increase damage as well. It's a mix of a couple of different genres for sure, or games rather.
I mean, you can definitely see the inspiration in a lot of elements that this game draws from. Again, like the SMT thing kind of went over my head the first time I saw it, but if you look at a couple of other things, like especially if you take, for example, a look at the world map, you have like your big town or tower, if you will, in the middle. You have your water region in the upper right. You have your fire in the upper left. You have earth in the lower left and wind in the lower right. You can probably think of an RPG or two that kind of does the same allocation of locations there, because I don't know what it is that water is like always in the upper right area. Like I don't know what it is, but it always seems to be there, and same with most of the other regions as well. It just seems to be like an unwritten RPG rule that if you have like elemental themed regions, they have to be in this specific spot on the world map.
I mean, yeah, the problem is there's just so much that's out there that it's hard to have it be specifically, unexplored territory, because it's like, oh yeah, fire, water, wind, earth. How innovative. Wait, people have been doing that since Final Fantasy 1? What are you talking about?
Has it been 40 years already? Nearly. I mean, yeah, there's only, so much you can do with some of these systems for sure, but it's just always, it gives you a bit of a, homecoming feeling, if that makes sense. If you just spot these elements that have been there for years or decades, even at this point, and you just spot them with this game. It's like, oh yeah, I know this. I see how this works.
Really, at the end of it is like the implementation and how when you mix and match things, that you make sure they complement each other rather than are at odds. So,
for sure.
Like the status effects in this game are a little bit too early and a little bit powerful considering, but like the ability that you can just jump over skills if you know to hold on to your points, that you can just overwhelm mid-game and early game is a really interesting design choice. Where like it's what makes each speedrun of RPGs kind of different, because some of them are based on levels, some of them are based on skill points, some of them both. Everything kind of has its unique thumbprint. And its skill-based ones are always very interesting, where they go from a skill-based system or ability system.
I mean, that's also like the good thing, right? We can still all enjoy RPGs, JRPGs, whatever it is, even though they are like slightly different. So basically everybody can find like, especially nowadays, where there's so many games out there, like that one game that is, like made for them, quote unquote, I want to say. That they just really feel at home about and feel good about the mechanics that you can do.
Yeah. That's the one thing with this is like, a lot of RPGs can just be kind of played casually, but it's when that right chemistry of mechanics gets put together that makes a very good speedrun.
Yeah.
Like when you mentioned you could just like open the menu starting the boss, I was like thinking to myself, I was like, this has got to be applicable somewhere else. There has to be somewhere else this can be used.
I was thinking the same thing, but I just haven't found anything or any other place where that would be of use or that I could make use out of it, which is like, again, It's just I haven't found it. Doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It's just that I wasn't able to find it until now. So if somebody else finds it, great. Well, let me know. I'd be hugely interested to see where else we could do this.
Yeah, you never can tell. Some games have 0 skips, and some games are just nothing but skips, so they have to have 6 categories.
Where do you draw the line for that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're doing more shopping here. Gonna grab a couple of these swords. Gonna grab a sham. We're gonna grab 2 bucklers. We're gonna grab a cotton mantle and 2 cotton robes. Let's go. Then we have another story mandated match of J-Ster. And what usually happens is we will absolutely destroy this lady. So let's see what happens here. Because she tends to have pretty rubbish tokens. And then to be fair, I don't have the greatest selection ever either. I'm actually having a pretty rubbish selection here, if I'm completely honest. But we have this one, and whoop, 6-1. Absolutely shredded. Okay, and then we go back, and then we make our way over to the next dungeon. So if you're keeping track so far, we've been to Pisca's Temple, which is a water-based temple, and we've been to Ares Temple, which was a fire-based temple. So now we are on our way to Virgo Temple, which is our first Earth Temple. And as you can kind of probably already tell by the names, yes, all these temples are based on the 12 zodiac signs and their respective elements. So there are a total of 12 temples in the game. And for the main story, you actually do not have to visit all 12 of them. So we won't be visiting all 12 of them. We will only do, quote unquote, the fastest. The first 5 temples that you have to go through, this will be our third, are mandated by the story. And once we have completed those, the game actually opens up a little bit and gives us a little bit more choice. And that is basically also the point where the speedrun will really take off, because we have one more grinding section coming on. And just a second here, once we get to the next temple. Because, once again, we've made quite a bit of progress story-wise, so of course the game is going to get harder. So we need to catch up a little bit in power level. Not necessarily to be able to get through it, but to be able to get through it fast. And that is why we go to Virgo Temple. So we can't just immediately walk back here, because it was right around where we were anyway. So what we're going to do here now is we're going back to Blazing Fields. And you might have seen me do this earlier, where we grabbed an ability for Caden, support ability, which is called Monster Bait. Now what Monster Bait does is, if I just stand here, or actually, before we do that, we have to finish up one side quest real quick. So let's go over here. And this is, again, one other item for O'Fern's little fish guys quest chain. We just have to defeat these blazing wolves. So let's do that. Okay. Now that we've done that, what Monster Bait does, and only Caden gets this ability because it is part of her base job. If I now press up on the D-pad, I will immediately start a random encounter from that region. So I don't have to run around the field anymore to, look for an encounter to be able to grind. Whenever I'm just standing anywhere, I can already start here pressing up on the D-pad, and I'm immediately in the next encounter. And this is where grinding really kicks it into overdrive, and where it's really fast to grind out this particular encounter with the 8 little bugs in it, because we're every 20 to 30 seconds or so we can complete one of these encounters to grind. Now obviously we don't only get that encounter, sometimes we get this one, which is only half the SP, because these are 4 enemies, the other encounter has 8 enemies, so we get 4 SP versus 8. But it's still the best spot at this point in the game to grind SP. And that is basically where the big grind of the game is going to be, because the other grinds that we've done so far They take between, I want to say, 15 to 20 minutes. If you do this in an actual speedrun, you will be here for like half an hour doing nothing else but grinding out these fights, because it is so fast, but also because we need so many SP to be able to grab all the abilities that we want at this point. So this is like kind of like the big slump, I want to say, of the speedrun, because you're literally just standing here for half an hour doing nothing but chaining these fights. Now, obviously, I won't do this for the whole time because we're not doing a complete speedrun here. We're bridging this a little bit. I just want to try and show off one particular thing, because we've seen the 2 encounters that we can get here. The one with the 2 bugs and the 2 wolves, and the other one with the 8 bugs. But there is a 3rd encounter that can sometimes happen here, and it's kind of rare. I want to say that, the 2 encounters we've seen so far, they are about a 50-50, and then the 3rd one has like... I don't know, maybe a 5% chance or so. So the others aren't really 50-50, but close to 47.5 or something like that. You make sense of the percentages here. But it is against a single enemy that has a very high speed stat. And if you are able to kill it, you get 20 SP. Now, again, if I get the fight with the 8 bugs, I get 8 SP. If I kill the single enemy, I get 20, which is, about 2.5 times as much. So ideally, I want to get as many of those as I can. The problem is they are faster than Arpeggio at this point. And what they usually do is they make you run away. They don't run away, they make you run away, which basically makes that, a quote-unquote lost encounter, because, I wasn't able to kill them, but I still got into an encounter, so I had the loading in animation, I had the loading out animation, but I did get absolutely nothing for it, which is like, just a time loss at that point.
That's interesting.
However, once we have grinded out a little bit, I think it's at around, what is it? 230 SP on Arpeggio, so in about 80 more. Arpeggio will be able to grab another agility node, and then he outspeeds those enemies, and he will always be able to kill them. And then it's like, when the grind gets even faster if you can get a lot of them. And that is where quite a bit of RNG comes into the speedrun, is how many of these Migalovs, as they are called, do you encounter while you're doing the grind. Like, you want ideally between 5 to 6 to be able to kill them. That's like 100 to 120 SP out of just those, which is quite a bit at this point. But yeah, it is up to RNG. If you encounter a lot of them now, when you can't reliably kill them, obviously it's a lot of waste. But you always have the small chance, because instead of making you run away, they have another ability that they can use that heals your MP. And they heal your MP, and then, the action is gone, and then you can just kill them anyway. So it's a bit of a coin toss, but it's RNG. So I'm just trying to see if I can be lucky and show them off. Because what's basically happening here is I count the rounds that I do in grinding in how often I have to replenish Arpeggio's MP. So once Arpeggio has run through one of his MP bars, basically that is when I call one round. And I have to do between 10 to 12 of these before we have enough SP to be able to continue here. So I'm just going to give this another 2 or 3 encounters, and I'll just load the save so we can go on with the showcase here. So as you can see now, Arpeggio's MP is completely depleted. I have to use ethers on him, and that is what I would call like 1 round of grinding. So I think that was like the second time I had to do this. So we had basically done 2 rounds of this now, and again I have to do between 10 to 12 to get the necessary SP. Basically what I'm looking for is I'm looking to have 1,200 SP in Alasia. The reason I chose to count SP in Alasia, is basically because, as I said before, she's the only character that we are not using during the speedrun, so her SP count is always consistent. So that makes it just really easy to see at a glance, okay, how many SP have I, gathered across all of the runs so far, and, what are my break points, so to speak. So yes, as you can see, she's at 726 now. I want to be at 1200 before I continue. And I guess I can just quickly do 2 or 3 more fights so I can show you what I will do with our pager here to grab this agility. So we're quickly going to do about 2 more fights, I think. Because then he has accumulated... Oh, there we go. There's the Miglov. And... Oh, it uses the MP cure. Cool. So I can actually show this off. Because the Miglovs, they are resistant against every single element, including physical attacks. So they will take very little damage from anything you can throw at them. So I basically, even with the way I am now, I could barely be able to kill them. However, the Dark Knight specifically has access to the Goety ability. And what Goety does is it reduces the HP of your other 3 party members to 1. And however many HP they have lost in that case, that is what is calculated as the damage for that attack. So if I use that, everybody gets reduced to 1 HP. And he gets dealt 1880 attack, and that ignores all kinds of defense or resistance. So that is like always a reliable way for Arpeggio to kill this particular enemy. Now, obviously, after that, your HP will regenerate. In order to hurry this up a little bit, you can just use an Omni Potion, and you are right back into the fight. Because the problem with the way that we are engaging in all of these fights with the Monster Bait ability is, and I've said this before, if I run into an encounter, like these bubbles there, I can either do like the fight normally, or I can get a surprise attack. That is why I always swing my sword, so I don't get surprised by the enemies, right? However, when you use Monster Bait, you can't swing your sword at that encounter that just materializes out of nowhere. So there's always a chance that your party gets surprised by the enemies. And as you can see, if I were to get into this fight and get surprised by the enemies, all 8 of these bugs would go before me, and they would have not negligible chance to kill probably Arpeggio, and then I would be kind of in trouble because he goes first. And he can't go because he's dead, so another character has to revive him, but then all the bugs go first again before he gets his turn. So you kind of can be in a little of a jiffy there when you get surprised by them. So you always want to have, a good buffer of HP going in there. So if you run into a Miglov and use the Goety ability, you want to heal up all of your characters at least a little bit before initiating the next encounter, just in case you get surprised and your characters might get killed off. Okay, cool. But now that I was able to show this off, again, this would just continue on and on. Oh yeah, right. I wanted to show that off with our pager. We would now grab Auto Regen, and then this ability note, or this agility note here, which gives him 4 agility, and now he has enough agility to always outspeed these Miglovs. So even if we encounter them, we are not reliant on RNG to give us the Omni HP cure ability from them. We can just outright outspeed them. We can use the Goety ability, and we kill them. And that's that. Okay, again, this would be the longest grinding session in the run, so we're just going to go ahead and skip completely over that, saving, well, not quite half an hour anymore because we did a little bit of it, but still quite a bit of time.
That's interesting. The Dark Knight uses his allies' HP instead of his own. That's very much, that's not normally how that functions with like every game that uses Dark Knights. It's normally their HP pool, and that's it.
I mean, they also have those kind of abilities, but for that particular thing, it's kind of nice that they have a couple more abilities that also still tie into the whole, Dark Knight.
It's an interesting ability I don't think I've ever seen before. It's more so what I'm getting at, which is a pretty interesting design choice, because it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to sacrifice their HP. Mine? No, perish the thought.
Yeah, Grand Eris, Omni Eris. So, since we stockpiled so many SP, this is like also one of the longest menus in the game for sure, because we are grabbing a lot of stuff now. If I can find it, there it is. And then we grab a bunch of strength on you. Not some more agility and not more strength. Okay, and this is also, because we have completed Ari's temple, you can see in the lower left corner, we have more main job crests. So we are going to now make Darkmoor into a Chronomancer. Now, a Chronomancer is basically like a time mage. as you can think of it. And he has a couple of very interesting abilities. For example, he can delete your enemy's FP, like a 40% chance to just, straight up delete those. Or he can bring back an ally that has been kicked from a battle, because some enemies can kick your characters from a battle and that are completely erased. They're not killed, they're just erased from the fight, and they are the only ones that can bring them back. But more importantly, what they can get is, first of all, Withering, which decreases all the main stats of your enemy. That's strength, defense, magic, and magic defense. We are grabbing HP, right? Yes, HP. And then agility, and then evasion, and then replay. Now what replay does is they can cast the ability that a different party member has cast during their turn again. So if you think about it, we have Ulan as a black mage. Ulan has access to these big level 3 spells, and Dagmar didn't have that, right? He had only the measly level 1 spells. With replay, you can just cast those again after Ulan has cast them at least once in the fight. So we basically, can redo that action, which, as you can imagine, kind of wreaks havoc on a lot of enemies from here on out. And then we take Eco, and Eco is going to be our white mage. And I think you all know what a white mage probably is. He's like our little big healer at this point. So he gets the better revival spell. We grab a bit more evasion. We grab more HP. Where's the other note? Oh, it's over there. We grab even more HP. We grab Auto Raise, which has a chance to automatically revive him. More magic defense. Rescuer, which has a chance to automatically revive a KO'd friend. And more magic defense. And then we also go to equipment. And we had a bit more shopping here that we did earlier. Get the cotton robe on. You get a different sword. And sham. Buckler and the cotton mantle, oops, mirror shields. Abilities. Ulan also now has a double cast. Now, as it says here, you can cast a single magic spell for twice the. You can cast the magic spell twice, but for 50% more cost. And since she already has so much magic attack, and we can now basically get a double cast on top of that, we quite increase her damage output even further. So if you thought it was ridiculous before, well, wait to see until you see her go now. We also have to recast that. And luckily,
at 150%, that sounds real nice.
Yep.
A lot of games, it's like, oh yeah, you have to pay an extra 50%, but the spell is also debuffed.
Nope.
Things like that.
Nope, not here. So yeah, luckily we already have another boss fight, so we can, show off our new shiny abilities. And these 3 people will probably have a very bad time. We're gonna focus here. We're gonna arrow with you. It's actually, why is that guy in the lower not dead? Oh, I think I forgot to use an FP at the start of the fight. Yeah, that is why you're still alive. Yeah, I think that should take care of him anyway. Yep, there we go. But why have one boss fight when you can have 2 boss fights, right? Like back to back, just like that?
We won't lose.
So Shala is a very interesting boss fight. As you can see, she's kind of like the Earth aspect, the Earth Astray. She nullifies physical attacks. But as every Earth enemy mostly is, they are weak to wind. So we're going to go ahead. Hit her 23,000 HP with a bit of wind. And then we bring in Ulan. And I think the numbers speak for themselves at this point. And that is about 23,000 HP just gone.
The only downside is the animations are a lot longer. It's very minor, though.
I think it's still worth it at that point for sure, because you're just completely deleting these enemies.
With that amount of
these
DPS,
bosses.
yeah,
I
think
they
that's
just
the
can't
right
do anything
call.
against that.
No kill like overkill.
And that is also like the nice thing. Like if you were to do a quote unquote proper speedrun of this, we would be nearly 2 hours into the run at this point. And my estimate usually is like 3 hours and 40 minutes. So basically, the next 1.5 hours, or basically the second half of the run, it's more or less a boss rush at this point, because this is also the point where I start to not fight as many normal baddies anymore. Actually, I think this is well, depending on how you look at this, but I'm gonna say that this is like basically the last dungeon where I fight all the encounters along the way. Because I can still, easily one-shot them, and we're still not quite done with the amount of abilities and stuff that we want to get. There are still a couple of things out there that we still need more SP for, but we can basically grab all of that along the way at this point. So we are really very quickly starting to get to the point we're just gonna, crush through the game with a reckless abandon, because we are so powerful at this point. And this is, where kind of the fun part of the speedrun also begins, because, you are just so powerful. And all the strategies for the boss fights are like routed around that. And I think we've come up with quite a few nice strategies to get rid of the bosses specifically, because keep in mind, basically all of them have these different phases that they go through, right? And every time we deplete their HP bar, they get filled up again, so we can't kill them in one hit, like we did with Charlotte just now. That was an exception. Usually we have to go through multiple hits, and that is why you want to have parties, or basically not only one powerful character in your party, but like multiple characters that can like play off of each other. And that's kind of the nice thing with this game in particular. Oh, another glove. Nice. Getting rid of you. That you are able, to build your party around that and make use of more or less every character, again, except Alasia, for the sake of the strategies. Gotta make sure that we, keep our ether addiction going and don't run out of SMP while we're going through this. But of course, most of the time, with these normal fights, it's just take a pause, Joe, use Omniforce and be on your way.
Don't underestimate us.
Uh-huh. I think I see what happened there. Okay, my bad. I forgot about this. So you're probably wondering, okay, how did I end up in this region all of a sudden? Well, the thing was, I initiated that previous fight while I was jumping, and I was still kind of over the chasm that I was jumping across, and your character basically, continues falling when you initiate a fight, so I fell into that chasm, and now I am in a different part of the dungeon, and I kind of have to quickly fight my way out of this. I'm not supposed to be here.
Let's do this.
Interesting. I guess it must keep the geometry loaded, so there's probably no interesting out of bounds you could do with that.
Probably not now.
So whenever you see something like that, it's like, what? Can I abuse this somehow?
Yeah, it's like, when I initiated this fight here, I was probably a little bit over this chasm, so the character basically fell down this hole.
Instead of landing.
And, well, it gets a little bit too cocky there. But, hold that thought that you just had, because what's coming up next is our fourth ring ability. We have the physical, the water, and the fire one so far. So obviously we're getting the earth one now. And this is probably the most busted one. Because what Earth does is, at any point here, you can now summon this little statue. And this one basically acts as a standing block you can stand on to reach higher elevated platforms. Now, the thing is, you can summon it in the air. That means it has collision in the air. And, I give you a moment to think about what that could mean, because
I'm understanding the implications pretty quickly. What if you Metroidvanias? I think I know what's going to happen here.
Because we will show this off in just a second here, in one of the next rooms. But yeah, I didn't initially knew about this, but I think it was LCC who randomly came into my chat at one point. You know, usually use the statue on like buttons like these to push them down because your character doesn't weigh enough to activate them. Or, you know, as the platform, as I'm shown. But the LCC at one point came into my chat and told me, hey, did you know that you can summon this thing in the air and it has collision there? And I was like, wait a minute, it does? And yeah, some interesting things were found going off of that. So I think there's like 2 more fights we have to get through and then we'll be there. But that's also the thing, like some of these fights you just cannot avoid because they are on like these little passageways, so there's no way for you to jump over them. So it's just kind of like this. There's like no way I could avoid this fight because this enemy only stands here.
Yeah, so you'd have to go. You would 100% have to go in the menu and turn off the encounters, pretty much.
So another thing is here you can use this to break through stuff like that. And this only works at like specifically programmed breakable floors like that. It's not used very often, but I guess it's kind of nice that they thought of doing a little bit of physics related stuff here. But after this next fight, we will have a big puzzle that we need to go through. Basically, we will use the water ring to change the water levels. It's not as bad as the water temple, definitely not, because this is an earth temple. Keep that in mind. But you can see it in the background there. We have this thing that you have to feed 3 water powers to in order to put this lake at a very specific water level so this door opens so you can get to the door behind that. So what we will do is, first of all, we need to get up here. Oh, that's here. So we would have to, push these buttons and whatnot, but instead, what we can do is we can just jump over here, and now we are basically behind that door that I just showed you. Now, on the other side here, we skip that whole puzzle. And that is the power of the Earth Ring. And don't you worry, we will be using and abusing that quite a bit for the rest of this run. Here we'll grab a little bit more magic and a little bit more strength. Don't think I have enough of that. No, just barely not. Because we have another boss fight coming up.
I'm not gonna cry.
So this will be a couple more Zefts. Mostly the same. Like we use Arpeggio, put 1 FP into Omniforcius. Then we will use Aereo on the big guy to build up our FP. Use Ice on this guy to potentially kill him and build FP. Don't want you to do that, but hey, here we are. So one of Dagmar's passive abilities is Fierceness. What Fierceness does is if you hit the weakness of an enemy, he then has a chance to cast the same spell again, which sounds kind of nice. The problem is if you hit one enemy, like that happened with the Ice spell, right? That was the weakness of the one enemy. It killed him, but Fierceness triggered, and then it cast Ice again, but then on a different enemy who was nullifying Ice, so I actually lost FP because of that. So it can backfire at some points, when these abilities trigger, but you still want to keep them on because, they're actually quite good to have, but they can sometimes nip you in the butt just a little bit. Same goes obviously for Ulan's double cast, right? Because double cast it's like a really powerful ability, but if you kill the enemy that you use the thing or you want to use the thing on, and then the same spell gets cast to another enemy that is resistant to it, that's not that great of an outcome. But here we have the refight against Shala. She has 6 phases now that we have to get through. And you can see that she has about 6,500 HP, so we'll use Forcius with 1 FP. That deals more than that, so we're already in the 2nd phase. She heals up again. We focus. We use Arrow. Come on, can you do it again, please. Okay, now he doesn't use it. Of course he doesn't, but then we're gonna just go ahead and use arrows. That was the first cast. We're now in the third phase. This is the double cast arrows. So we're now in the fifth phase. So then we use Forcius again. Oh, I think that was actually... I should have used 2 points there. No. Wait, I think I miscounted one phase because now we are on the fifth phase. Excuse me, but now we can use replay off of Ulan to finally push her into the sixth phase. And this is where the fight usually really starts, because now she doesn't have like 8,000 HP anymore. She has now like nearly 40,000. But luckily she retains her wind weakness, so we can just, you know, keep abusing that. And basically Ulan will more or less make very short work of her. I guess we just have to clean up with our Pajo. And there we go.
It's over.
That is like the you know, the point in the run where for me like the fun really starts accumulating, because you can just shred through all of these boss fights like really quickly with the abilities that we have accumulated, which makes the grind just worth it. Because otherwise, you know, the fights always, it would take a lot longer, because these are enemies, these fights in particular, they're not really easy. If you play this casually, it will struggle quite a bit, I would say, with most of the bosses, because, you know, again, the enemies, the developers, oh, what a Freudian slip there, orientated themselves around the battle system of SMT, and as we all know, the SMT games are not the easiest out there.
Yeah, I mean, to
Definitely
be fair, speedrunners and the developers are kind of diametrically opposed most of the time.
Yep.
Our goals couldn't be any different.
Mm.
Oh, no. I don't want to have fun. I just want to break your game. That's it.
Yeah, the game kind of wants to break you, doesn't it?
That's one of the interesting parts. It's a game that has a more higher difficulty curve, like SMT and stuff. Obviously have a different palette for people that want to speedrun it, where it's like, I want to break this game back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, definitely can see that happening in this game. Okay, we are changing our party a little bit around. It's time for Kaden to make her comeback, and we are going to turn her into an assassin.
So
now,
when you get the emblems, you only get it for a few characters at a time, which is why we're slowly but surely changing. Is that how this works?
You basically get 2 emblems whenever we finished a temple. So we got the first 2 emblems after we finished Pisca's temple, you know, the one with the glitch where we didn't do the boss fight. We got the next 2 after we rescued Eco shortly thereafter. And we got the other 2 just after we beat Shala right now.
Can they be used on any character, or do they?
They can be used on any character. You are free to choose on which character you use it and which job you get out of it, as long as it's the main job. We can't get, you can see it on the right side there, we cannot unlock the sub and support jobs yet. Those will come a little bit later in the game.
Okay.
But we are gonna grab ahead more magic stat for Ulan. We are getting more strength for our Pajo. Yes, I can't get that right yet. Dagmar gets more magic, and he gets gift. And then Kaden as an assassin, she also is gonna get magic attack. And an assassin basically gets a lot of debuff attacks. You know, it's just like an attack that has a 75% chance to inflict like protect or lowers the physical defense of an enemy, things that can cast mute on enemies, and, you know, all these kind of things. That's basically what an assassin does in this game. But what they also get is darkness spells, and especially Umbrorima, which is like a level 4 darkness spell, so the highest level of darkness spell you can get in the game. And I guess you can kind of tell what I'm trying to do here with, pushing her magic stats and grabbing that particular spell. So grab all of that, and then we also are going to equip that on her, and we are, talking to that guy. So the reason why I'm doing the jobs in the order that, like, some of the times I don't immediately switch characters to the jobs when I have access to. I basically wait until that particular character in that particular job is needed, just, to cut down a little bit on the menuing you would normally do here.
Good for the soul. I think I can imagine why.
You can especially see that later when we get the sub jobs, where I will wait a little bit before I will assign those.
You were saying earlier that the first 4 areas you kind of have to go to, and then the remainder of the dungeons can be done in any order. How does the scaling on that work? That's a good question. If I remember correctly, it's like every time you clear one temple, the others level up a little bit more. Okay.
So it's kind of like in Second Setsu 3 or Trials of Mana, when you get to the Benevodons later in the game and you kill one Benevodon, all the others start leveling up and so on and so forth.
That makes sense.
So this is Onus. This is the Leo Astray. He is weak to darkness. So we are going to defense break him. Since we have Kaden in, we will now use Umbrarima on him, but a normal Umbrarima without any FP. And even that does, does a little bit of damage to him, not too much, but around about 6,000 is not too bad. But remember, Dagmar is a Chronomancer. He has replay, so we can just select Kaden and then pump in from SP. We recast Umbrarima, and since he is a better caster, he will just completely shred that boss.
So basically mimic.
Exactly.
Nice.
And that you can kind of see, how the party composition that I try to establish here is trying to work out from here on out.
Elemental weakness is key, so mages are
Yes.
pretty much the tent pole.
My wife left behind.
Makes sense.
And now we will make our way to the 4th temple that we'll do. This is going to be the Leo temple. So we did 1 water temple, 1 fire, an earth, and now our 2nd fire temple. So we are not doing a wind temple as our 4th, which definitely caught me by surprise a little bit at the beginning, because you would think, okay, we go through all of the elements and then we start doing it again or whatever, but no, we are skipping wind for now. And these rats are a pain, because they are very fast, they have very high evasion, and another thing is about the force spells, like the Omni Forcius that Arpeggio is using. It is a non-elemental spell that uses strength, or scales off of strength, which technically makes it similar to a physical attack, as in that enemies can actually dodge it. Now you won't see that happening on most enemies, because I'm most often using an FP to boost the attack, which increases the accuracy of it. But since these rats have such an high accuracy, there's a very good chance of Arpeggio still missing them. And then actually a bit of scrambling starts, because, again, we are technically very on the level at this point. Yes, we are strong, but basically my whole party consists of glass cannons at this point. If I'm the one taking the damage, I won't be able to take it long, because my party will just crumble underneath it. So if enemies actually are able to survive my onslaught here, there's a very high chance of me dying. So these rats in particular are not great. And that will be very important for a Leo Temple when we will enter it in just a second here. So the reason I'm taking these fights here is you could theoretically route these out by just having a little bit of a longer grind in the blazing fields. However, these enemies give a lot more experience. And so we are, leveling up a little bit higher with them. And we are starting to be at the point where we cannot grab as many nodes in the Ascension trees anymore to make our characters stronger. We are starting to run out of them, or we are starting to get to a point where we need so many more SP that it's just not feasible to grind for SP anymore to grab those nodes. So that is why at this point, slowly but surely, levels start to be important. And the Leo Temple is a huge deviation from all the other temples that we've done so far, because Leo Temple is a Colosseum. And what we have to do here is we have to, you can see that in the top right there, we have to do 4 consecutive battles, and there is no pause between the battles. The state you're in at the end of one battle is the state you're in at the start of the next one. So basically, this is what all the grinding that we have been doing so far is for, because I want to be Arpeggio so fast that he outspeeds all of the enemies in the Colosseum, so I can just do this and not have to worry about the condition or the status that my party is in at the end of any of these fights. And these dark rats here, these are the absolute bane of my existence, because at this point they are tied with Arpeggio and agility. So it is a coin flip if he goes first or they go first. So if both of these rats were going first and they were attacking Arpeggio, Arpeggio would then die, and I would be in a pickle, in a really, really bad pickle. And as you can see, they have a good chance of evading my attacks as well. So this is definitely a bit of a dicey situation you can find yourself in here. Sorry, you wanted to say something, Sid?
It's gone. The thought's gone. Don't worry about it. I'll come back to it eventually.
So yeah, you can see the reds go first. I mean, luckily, quote unquote, they are dividing their attacks between my parties, so everybody can live through them. But if they just dogpile on Arpeggio, see, missed another one. Not great. Not great.
Oh yeah, I was going to ask if the as you pick up skills, I'm assuming the point cost scales then. Which is why you're only picking up?
They actually don't scale. They have set costs. Like every node will always cost a specific amount. It's just, like if you think of them like kind of as a spiral that goes from the middle like outwards in all directions, the further you go away from the middle, the more
extremities are more expensive.
Yeah.
And then like the diminishing returns versus like the speed or the grinding.
Like,
I gotcha.
Like you can see, the Dark Knight, for example, starts here at Doom. You get that automatically with the class, and then the next one costs 35, and then 150 already, and this one costs 80 again. Or if you go down here, this one costs 140, and then 90, 180, 350. So the costs really go up, whereas these only cost like 20 or 30 or whatever it was at that point. Okay. So it's like a very smaller investment. And the same here, obviously, as the spells get stronger, they cost like 75, 110, 125, and so on and so forth. But as you can also see, we've grabbed most of like the purple nodes, for example, that increase Ulan's magic stats. There's like only 2 left, but they are also behind a lot of other nodes that I would have to grab first that are like very expensive. Like these alone, 110, 125, and this goes also 70. That's, again, you get like 8 SP out of this 8 bug grind. So if you do the math, how many fights you would have to do just to grab those 2 nodes to then be able to grab this one.
Yeah, okay. I see.
But yeah, we are not done in the Colosseum yet because we have to do 4 rounds or 4 fights each. Luckily, these dark rats that I was just talking about only show up in the first set of fights and in the 4th set of fights. So the 2nd and 3rd set of fights are free, quote unquote, as long as you are set up the way I am. But again, if you're doing this casually, you will probably struggle quite a bit because there are a lot of different enemies that you fight here, all with different stats, with different weaknesses, with different resistances, and it takes a while to figure out how to get through this. Or you have Arpeggio as a Dark Knight who would just tear through everything. But again, like specifically all the grinding that we have been doing more or less was to get Arpeggio's agility stat high enough that he basically outspeeds the enemies in here, so you have an easier time. Obviously, getting all the other power increases on Ulan, on Darkmoor, and the other characters are also good to get through the other fights, but this this Colosseum in particular made me rack my brains like, okay, how the hell do I get through this in a speedrun setting? Where I am probably going to be underleveled, where these enemies will probably completely wipe out my party whenever they get a turn. And that is kind of how these grinding sessions that we have been doing up until now came to be. Okay, why did you not get hit? You are weak to Earth? No. Okay. I don't think I've ever seen one of these guys dodge a page or spell, but I guess here we are.
We're learning so much today. Wish it was a little bit less.
Well, I mean, that's the fun thing about speedrunning, like in general. I guess it doesn't matter which game it is, but you can have run a game like, I don't know, 100 times or so, and there's still like this one thing that just has never happened to you. And then you're just, in a public setting, in a marathon or in a showcase like this, and all of a sudden you're like, I've never seen this happen before.
I spend a lot of times in runs where something like goes wrong, and I'm like, well, I learned something new. I kind of wish I hadn't, but I learned something new today.
Yep, definitely. All right, 2 more fights to go.
Okay, it's on.
All right, and now we have another different setup that we're going to do here. We are going to bring in Alec. He hasn't been in the party for a while at this point, so it's high time we switch him back in. But first, with Arpeggio, we're going to get Last Stand, which has 40% chance to resist being KO'd and surviving with 1 HP. Classical Dark Knight move, I want to say. And then Dagmar gets Supplement, and for Alec, we are going to turn him into a warrior. Now, warrior is basically, your mainly physical focused heavy damage dealer. And most importantly, he gets double slash and triple slash, which basically, as the name suggests, lets him attack 2 or 3 times in 1 turn. Which is totally not busted at all, I swear. I'm gonna load him up with more strength and more MP, because those 2 moves take a lot of MP to use. We are going to go to Arpeggio. We're going to equip the Last Stand. You get Supplement. You get Dangerous. And Dangerous is like a very interesting passive ability, because it makes it so that when you spend at least 1 FP on a move, you have a 30% chance with that move to crit.
Ooh.
We're also going to, Alec, equip Kang and the Payskin armor. And then we're going to fight the next boss, which is going to be Onus again. Now, Onus is a bit different this time around. He is not weak against darkness anymore, and instead he changes weakness every turn. Now, on the first turn, he will always be weak to fire, and after that, it is random what he will be weak or strong against. Which can have a bit of a problem sometimes. So what we're going to do is we're going to use fire to build up our FP. Now, he also counters your attacks, which is also not great. And then we're going to use triple slash. And the fight is already done. And yeah, that is like, I want to say the new meta in a way. We're not exactly phasing out Ulan or anything, but this is like definitely the point where physical attacks are starting to come into their own and start to be very powerful, because at this point we are able to stack so much strength on Alex specifically that he just deals a bunch of damage now.
Yeah, like in my experience with Remake, Rebirth, and Remake and Rebirth, like early game magic can be very strong, but then like physical comes into its own about mid game when you can actually start hitting those break points or having extremely strong abilities. Then it kind of cycles back.
That is also exactly why Ulan is the best black mage, because of the 1-for-1 ability, you know, that decreases her strength but increases her magic. Because the way damage works in this game, it's kind of like exponential. Like once you are over, you know, a certain threshold when it comes to the enemy defense, like every point in your attack stat becomes that much more potent. So you really just want to load up on either magic or strength, which is why 1-for-1 is that good of an ability on Ulan, and why Dagmar, you know, couldn't compare to Ulan as a black mage. So next boss fight here, and this is a boss fight that is kind of recurring in the game. This is not the last you will see, but all of them are kind of painful because we're starting to fight the Oasis here. And as you can see, you know, they're bird people. What do bird people have? Well, they have high evasion, and that is certainly a problem. Birds are jerks, everybody. Always were, always will be. We're going to build our FP, and then we use Omni Slash. Now, Omni Slash is basically a physical attack on the whole enemy team. And there we go.
I'm going to be honest. Seeing the birds with the guns reminds me of the dad joke of birds would be scared if worms had guns. And I'm just like... All right, not only they have high evasion, but now they can shoot.
Yeah, they are definitely a problem. But now we are in the tunnels here, and this is basically the last area where I will take all the encounters in. Like after this, whenever I take an enemy encounter, it is because I have to, because there's, you know, no other way to get around it. But otherwise, we are basically done with our grinding. The rest of our SP will come from boss fights and similar. So the time of the shredding is nearly upon us.
Yeah, I see the like payout of that heavy grinding segments that you were talking about earlier, because it pushes you back into a 1-2 turn fight, which just ends up saving so much time, especially since you don't have to potion every single time or worry about, well, am I going to get hit with X or Y? You're just like, nope, die, nope, die.
Exactly, and that is also, you know, like I explained just before when we were on Leo Temple, why I feel, you know, quote unquote good about the grinding sessions, because I just have found no other way to get through this. So these Coliseum fights, because I just needed a pager to have this agility breakpoint. To be able to outspeed, you know, everything but the rats, because I just did not find any other way to get through this consistently and also fast. I mean, you could try and, you know, brute force your way through there, but oh my god, would it be painful? And I don't think it would be faster as well. Just, you know, not grinding and just getting to that point through quote unquote normal gameplay.
I mean, especially since you can turn off the encounters. Doing a dedicated grind segment, especially where you can summon enemies that give you a massive amount of SP, is like a huge dynamic shift, because it's like 1 to 2 abilities, or at least a good chunk of an ability for just a single encounter. The only way you could make that better is by finding a way to either finding an area where it's a higher rate to get that low encounter, or consistent to get it some way. And
that's like the thing, right? Because, you know, every enemy, well, most enemies only ever give you 1 SP. There just is no better way to grind SP other than getting into a fight that has a lot of enemies. And that particular one, you know, with the 8 bucks, is like one. I don't think there's ever another fight that gives you that many enemies at once.
Yeah, you'd have
or
to.
At least
like,
I can't remember one off the top of my head.
Looking at it objectively, you'd have to have like an accessory later that like multiplied your SP per fights to justify breaking it up any further. But
go ahead.
Like either that or some sort of like interesting interaction with like Pokemon, where like the repel pushes away all low, strength enemies to like force out the rare one. But you'd have to like, hey devs, you want to tell me how you coded this? Because I'd love to know.
Now that you're saying this, I think there is actually an accessory or something that increases at least the experience that you gain, but I think there's another one that increases the SP that you gain, but that is in post-game, so yeah.
Because SP seems to be such a powerful commodity. I could see that being a post-game thing where it's like, here, you can max out your characters, but only after you've done everything.
Okay, nearly through this.
It's always funny with speedruns anyway, because sometimes you get devs into a call, you'll do something, and the devs are like, what? What did I just... what am I seeing? Excuse me?
For sure. I mean, even they, can't think of all the things you could.
Oh yeah.
Like they give you the tools, like for example, all the jobs, right? But even they probably haven't tested like every single combination of every single ability in every single encounter and see what they do, because you would need a lot of manpower and just brute force to get all of that data.
It's like the part earlier where you use the statue to jump over the wall to avoid opening the door. That's the kind of things that like some devs catch, but some of them will just be like, oh yeah, that's a thing you could do, huh? That was totally intended. Looks from side to side.
So we got another boss fight here. One of the enemies is weak against physical attacks. The other is weak against magical attacks. We just abuse their weaknesses and kill them in a couple of hits.
You could have fooled me. Some of these boss fights look like not so bossy, unfortunately for them.
Yeah. Especially seeing, how quickly we get through some of them there.
Yeah.
But that is, the power of a speedrun, when you know what you're getting into and you know what their weaknesses are and stuff like that, and you can just basically delete them instantly when they show up. Like, again, this was a one-turn fight, basically.
Yeah, just like I was saying earlier with SMT, and since this game kind of takes notes from SMT, it's knowledge is power. Yes. Even more so than like a normal speed run. It's like I've known a lot of people that did SMT or Persona speed runs, and that's one of the very important things is knowing the pre-knowledge to go for specific tools and avoid the like useless time wasters, I guess, like picking up other elements that you're just not going to use. Like, nope, nobody's weak to wind. I don't care. That first boss was weak to wind, and that's it. I'm not using Garu anymore.
Yep.
It's going back in the box.
Wait, I think no. Okay, we have to do some story-mandated backtracking there, and I lied a little bit when I said there was going to be no more grinding in here, because there's one more grind that we specifically have to do in the Oasis here. Now, the Oasis is a place that we have been to earlier in the game already. However, we didn't have the monster bait ability yet here. And the interesting thing is, if I use a monster bait here, or get into an encounter here, because normally there are no enemies in this area, for some reason I am fighting this enemy now. And this enemy is actually a boss that we would face later in the game. Now, the reason I am fighting this enemy right here is because he gives a lot of SP, but still a little bit short on SP. So this is like, we are finally strong enough to do this encounter, because technically I could have already fought this guy when we did our big grind earlier, but I just was nowhere near strong enough to get through this fight. But now here we are. And the gimmick with this fight is he has like two different phases. Like either the eye is up top, or the whatever that other thing is up top. And his weaknesses and resistance changes accordingly. And when the eye is up top, he is weak against physical attacks. So obviously, I want to use Alec with triple slash again. And otherwise, if the motor or whatever that is up top, I want to hit him with the magic attacks. Yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and defend here. And you can see this guy deals a lot of damage, and he's kind of focusing Alec at the moment, which I don't really like. I guess you have to see how they get to them. Because this guy is worth 35 SP.
Ooh. That is pretty nice.
And if you remember, even the Mikolovs, like the metal slimes that you find out are only worth 20. So he is worth nearly double that. And the fight is reasonably quick. It didn't quite go the way I wanted it to. I had to think a little bit about it, but it was still good enough, I would say. And we're going to do this one more time, and that is actually the last grinding fight we're going to do. Anyway, the gimmick with this fight is if you hit him with one of his weaknesses, he has a 50% chance of switching phases. So it's not set in stone when he does that. It's literally a coin flip when you hit his weakness if he switches to the other phase or not. And that is kind of why I want Eco in here, to have one more magic user to be able to potentially switch this guy over to his physical weak form. And as you can see, he just does not want to comply. Oh, no. Okay. We just got it just before it was Alec's turn there. And so we have now 4 FP to triple slash worth, so that should be fine. Sadly, our Arpeggio died, so he will miss out on the FP experience and everything. But it should be fine because we're not really depending on our Arpeggio anymore. So we're also going to the Ascension tree. We're going to pick up a couple more things here. Level 4. Wind spell. He gets a bit more HP. And then Alec is getting more strength and more accuracy because we want, obviously, for triple slash to hit. And there's a bunch of story happening. We're just going to skip through all of that. I think 5 cutscenes or so you have to skip through. A lot of stuff happening. But again, if you the thing about the reason why I'm not talking about the story specifically a lot is also I think it's the weakest element of the game. I think they have this really interesting world that they have built, and they are setting up quite a few story threads. And at the end, it's just your typical, RPG story where
regular twist,
an evil god at the end, and blah 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 blah. And I was really disappointed by that. Not gonna lie, because I really wanted to just experience more of the world that they have built, with these 8 characters that are fated to die after 3 years and what that means to everything, especially because through some, other story reason, you actually meet one of the previous demigods, that should be dead, but he managed a way to escape, and that just never gets explored, and you just think that what? How can you? I
mean, that seems like that would be a very big plot thread if they have 6 months left to go. They're accepting that fate or fighting against it in a different way would definitely be a very interesting emotional story beat to explore for sure.
Exactly. And so I was a bit disappointed by it for sure. But again, the story isn't terrible or anything. It just kind of didn't go in the direction that I
cliched
wanted it to. But, it is what it is.
To be fair, there's a lot of pretty good games out there that have kind of weaker stories. 16, I find that its combat is stellar, but its story drags on a bit. And I've always been you can enjoy it, that's fine. I didn't really like it. But that's one of the things that's very important, especially when speedrunning, being honest about the game, not being well, this game is perfect. It's well, it does have some weaknesses, but this is fun. Yeah. The combat definitely seems to shine the most out of everything with this game.
Absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, that is the most important thing, especially if you're doing a speedrun of it or something. Obviously, you want the gameplay to be good. The story we skip anyway, right? So really not a lot of care that we do about that. So as long as the gameplay is good and it's fun, snappy, it's all that really matters at the end of the day anyway.
I mean, especially with an
RPG. Casually, it's different, but...
Yeah, with an RPG, the two... It's either got to be strong, fun gameplay that's, binds you, or a good story. Rarely you get both, where it's a very strong story and very strong gameplay. But I find a lot of the time it's one or the other, which is fine. But that's the difference between like a Chrono Trigger and, some other series that like a lot of people play but don't remember as much as Chrono Trigger.
Absolutely.
There's a ton of RPGs on the SNES, but a lot of people say Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3, 4, 6 specifically, but there's so many other ones that are just forgotten.
And that is why all of you need to watch RPG Limit Break to see those few pearls that you might have missed.
Oh yeah, I know the selection committee does their best to balance between the popular stuff and games more like this that kind of have gone under the radar and underrepresented for sure. Especially Quest for Glory as well does a very good job at making sure that happens as well, which I think that's coming up soon. I know it's coming up soon because I have a run in it. Over here playing stupid. I'm just over here playing stupid.
Speaking of changing up the formula, we now have a shmup segment. And as you can see, I am able, like in the top left corner, I'm able to cycle through the elements that I'm shooting at. And like the normal enemies in the fights, these enemies that I'm fighting against have different weaknesses and resistances and whatnot, and it is up to you to figure out, which of those they are. You even have a score count on the top right, which is basically just for show. It doesn't do anything. You don't get any rewards based out of that, so it's just personal challenge you want to get through there. But these segments can actually be quite hard. Again, keep in mind we are playing on normal difficulty right now, and you can see in the top left corner these greenish crystals. That is my health bar. I have, 6 or 8 health at the moment. If you're playing on a hard difficulty, you only have 4. And that definitely changes the dynamic here quite a bit, because with only 4 health, you are doing this very much more carefully, because you can see, the enemy projectiles are kind of starting to pile up here. But you also get a couple of nice power-ups, like this double shot that we have now, that makes things a little bit easier. But, it's just a nice change of pace from the gameplay so far, because, RPGs, bit of a slower side when it comes to speedrunning for sure, and this definitely spices things up a little bit. Actually gives you a little bit of a breather too, because I don't think the speed depends on how quickly you kill the enemies. At least I wasn't able to confirm it so far.
Yeah, I was gonna say, immediately when I saw this, my brain was like, this looks like it could be a bathroom break.
Yeah, no, you still have to get through this. If you just go to the bathroom, you will definitely die. Which is actually kind of funny, because if you go ahead and watch my world record run of this, which was during a marathon, at this particular point, I actually had to go to the bathroom so urgently that I just left it running and went to the bathroom for 2 minutes or so. And when I came back, I died, and I still world recorded. So my world record literally has a pee break in it.
It just, you take the controller, you put them in the bottom right, and just mash the button while you're peeing and hope it works out. Don't die.
Sadly, it didn't.
The icon fights, you can get away with that sometimes in 16. It's so weird, because there's some unskippable cutscenes, so literally your pee breaks are in the middle of boss fights. You're just like, well, phase change. Be back in 3 minutes.
Oh boy. Yeah, the new boss fight, you might remember these two. We fought them a short while ago, and they kind of have the same gimmick as the mechanical monstrosity that we fought a while ago, where they have a 50-50 chance to, change to the other phase and their other weakness whenever they get hit by an attack that targets their weakness. So we're just kind of to try and play around that, and the guy's already dead. Perfect.
I mean, I gotta say, I appreciate enemies with the rolling weakness like that, where you can just pull up the spell and it tells you if they're weak to it or not. Mm-hmm. So that way you're not wasting turns rolling the dice over and over again. That's what I always hated about enemies like that.
Again, you can turn that off or on.
But I just in general, being able to know that versus okay, I got to use peek. Or, oh, I've got to cast fire. Oh, cool, they absorbed it, and I healed them. Nice. All right, I guess I'll use ice to offset that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Speaking speaking of that, actually, we are now grabbing our first sub-jobs because, you know, that we defeated these bosses, we get our first quest that allows us to grab a sub-job. Now, the way this works, because, you know, we already grabbed Chronomancer as our main job, so we can't do that again. So our choices get reduced to Shaman or Black Mage. And then once we grab our sub-job, obviously only one job remains, and that will be our support job when we get those quests. For Darkman specifically, we're going to grab Shaman. And Shaman is a very interesting job because what they allow you to do is they infuse your physical attacks with an element, and your physical attack basically is not physical, or it's not counted as a physical attack anymore, but as an elemental attack. So if I were to use Fire Fuse on Alec and he uses Triple Slash, it's not dealing physical damage anymore, it's dealing fire damage. And, you know, since elemental weaknesses are such a big part of this game, being able to use Triple Slash and target elemental weaknesses is a huge deal.
Weakness multiplier plus high strength equals brr.
Yep. So we're gonna grab a couple more things here with all of our characters, and then we are gonna give Eco a sub-job, and he's gonna be a harnesser. And a harnesser is basically a glorified buff bot that gets, you know, abilities that increase your physical strength, but most importantly, he gets Crystal Break. And what Crystal Break does, it decreases the strength and the magic by 30% of the user, and that increases the strength and magic attack of the rest of the party by 30%. So it's quite good. We're gonna grab this right here, and then we are gonna continue on. And yeah, this is actually Gemini Temple. This is our first wind temple that we are doing in the game. As you can probably tell by, you know, all the windmills in the background and, you know, the wind going on, a lot of blah. So we're gonna solve a puzzle here, and on the next screen, I think it is. Pay attention to these platforms. These platforms lead us to an upper path that we could go on, but we're gonna ignore that upper path. We're just gonna stay on the lower one for now.
A very Mega Man type thing. It's like sometimes the upper path just isn't faster.
Because what we would need to do is you would need to go up the upper path, which will eventually, after minutes of exploring, lead you to a button that you can press. What that button does is that the last platform here will periodically shoot up higher in the air, so you can actually, you know, make that jump up the plateau. However, we have our statue here, with which you can just bypass that, so we don't have to do this, you know, puzzle.
I was half hoping it would like clip into the wall and just stay there.
Nah, sadly it doesn't do that. It still has, you know, gravity dragging.
That'd be
like
too much fun. Can't have that now, can we?
But hey, at least, you know, we don't have to do all of that upper path.
Yeah.
Sorry, Saren, her group would be here, right?
And, you know, since we are at a wind temple, obviously we have some wind-themed puzzles like we do here, where we have to direct these boxes with the flow of the wind to, you know, make these wheels turn. That will eventually open the path in the middle there.
I always do appreciate when they like implement puzzles like this, but the first one's like pretty straightforward. So you're like, oh, okay, I understand the gimmick. Because it's like, well, this I could skip this, but also I probably wouldn't have known what to do.
So yeah, you have to, you know, burn this one barricade before, and then it's also a new mechanic where you have to turn off the wind, so the block actually falls down this little crevice there and doesn't go, you know, straight across.
That's a really interesting way to use that. See?
And now you have like two that you have to push in their respective holes.
Just let it. I'm like, yeah, it'll solve itself. We're fine now.
I still have movement during this cutscene here, so you can already grab our 5th ring power, which is the power of air. And as you saw, that we can now push these blocks ourselves. And the game wants you to make use of that in the next room. So we have to traverse, you know, this chasm here. And you would have to go the left and then up, and then there you can kind of see it up there. There's like a gap up top there where we can push a block down, so we have a bridge basically, or we can just use our earth power here to already have a platform, and we just skip that puzzle as well.
That is really cool that it stays up on the air, so you can just be like, yeah, I can do this as long as I can jump.
I mean, I'm just kind of questioning how strong that air draft is, that the stone statue, doesn't get pulled down, but whatever.
Sometimes you just don't question video game logic, or else it makes your life worse. See, you've been mentioning that we've been picking up these ring powers. Is the ring a significant story item, or is it just kind of a tool for these puzzles?
It's more a tool for the puzzles, really.
Okay.
Like, there's like no story relevance to it, sadly. I mean, the rings themselves have significance to them, because that is basically where the power of the demigods come from. But the powers themselves, like these fire power and the wind power and whatnot, don't have any story relevance.
It wouldn't be the first MacGuffin. Go ahead.
And now that we've solved these puzzles, what we're actually supposed to do is, continue through the temple to eventually make our way back here. Or what we could do is what I just do is use the fast travel to just immediately go back here and save us the backtrack. So you miss out on a couple of treasure chests and stuff, but we don't need them anyway. So yeah, just skip all of that. And then we have our next boss fight coming up in just a moment. Which will be, once again, against a group of Avisis. Well, like I said, these guys are just hounding us for a little bit in the story. So we're basically going to use our tried and true strategy, using an Omniforcius to weaken them up a bit. Trying to survive their attacks. Building up our FP. I can just do that again. And then hopefully Omni Slash will take care of all of them.
I'll take you all on.
Omni Slash, you've got my attention. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, sadly, it's not a multi-hit attack against one enemy. It's basically just, an attack against all enemies at once, but hey.
Slash all materia, sure. I'm good with that. Yeah, I gotta love the abilities that give physical more reach, because that's always been the downside of physical abilities, especially now more so with action RPGs being a lot more common, where your physical is only ever really single targeting and there's not much to be done about it.
Mm-hmm.
At best, maybe you get an AoE that's kind of got some reach to it, but that's about it.
And so we're doing a bit of shopping here because the shops have updated their inventory, and we can also grab a couple more powerful items now. So we are grabbing some life cores, which are full revives, some angel kisses, which are full team revives, as well as some panaceas, which clear all status ailments on your party, which I guess you can imagine is pretty good.
You weren't kidding when you said the items in this were good and available.
Yep. Just buying an Omni Panacea? Huh.
Getting a full revive in an item and being able to purchase it at your own discretion sounds like heresy almost.
I think all the Final Fantasy owners just perked up and was like, what?
Those don't even exist in my game. What is this?
And now we're gonna equip all of the stuff that we just bought. So you get the Octant armor. Get the Octant armor, and then Eco gets the.
Do you say that? I really enjoy how the weapons actually have different sprites as well. It's one of the things I always have I don't hate it, but I dislike it when a lot of games have expressive sprites like this and then they don't change the weapon, and it's oh, come on.
Also, remember this guy?
Hey, Okay, it
This
looks
is where you
familiar.
actually fight him, in the story.
Yeah, because you had to use that taunt ability on a screen that didn't have any encounters at all.
Exactly. So because he didn't turn, we can just fire fuse on Alec now to again make his attack a magical attack, basically, to get around the physical resistance.
Oh yeah. So now with the infusion, it really doesn't matter.
Yep. But sadly, it wasn't enough to kill him. But I can just be
Just do a poke and see if it works.
and just try to roll around Alec's turn again, so we can just use the normal triple slash because he swapped around.
Oh, so the fire infusion falls off after one use.
Yes,
Okay.
it lasts for one turn.
I was thinking
The
like
thing is, we've talked about how you can use your FP to empower your moves. Like obviously, physical attacks deals 50% more damage or 200% more damage depending on how many FP you use. The interesting thing is, if you use your FP with, say, a buff, that affects how many turns they last. So if I were to use 2 FP, so 100% buff on a or 100% increase on a buff that lasts 2 turns, it would then last 4 turns because 100% increase.
1 FP, 1 extra turn. Interesting. That is a good way to like make the FP useful on all abilities. Obviously, it's less useful when like you're looking at 100% damage buff versus like an additional 2 turns of a buff.
Yeah.
But at least it gives you some dynamic gameplay choices.
Yeah.
Whether one is good or not, at least it has an
That's what you need to figure out, right?
Yeah.
Situation.
I guess it's like a lot of people early game with Pokemon too. Like a lot of casuals, you don't use like Swords Dance or any of the buffing moves. You just keep slapping the attack moves. Turns out X attacks are good. Who would have thought?
It just all depends on the circumstance. But yeah, we are now at the point in the story where we have completed 5 of the temple. We did Piscus Temple first. We did Ari's Temple, Virgo Temple, then we did Leo Temple and Gemini Temple. So we have done 5 of the 12 total temples. And now the game basically opens up and says, here you go. You can choose out of the remaining 7 temples that are in the game. And you only have to complete 3 for a total of 8 that we have to complete. So, the game really opens up at this point and you can basically go wherever you want because you have all the abilities that you need. So what we do here, we first go to the wind area basically, and we picked up this stun god ring that you just saw me open or get from the chest before I went into the temple. And now what we're going to do is we're going to advance this side quest chain that we've been dragging along for basically since the beginning of the showcase here. And we're trying to get to the end of it. So we have to do a little bit of backtracking to some older temples here and some very weak enemies that we will just quickly get rid of. But, for the sake of the side quests, we have to kill these. We could have done that earlier, but it didn't really matter because there was nothing that we could have done with the side quest anyway, because there was no way for us to advance it until this point in the game. So we might as well, do it now and be as overpowered as we are for these very easy fights here. So we're just gonna do this fight real quick.
Yeah, because you can just use one low or mid-tier spell here and it wipes them out because your stats are so high. Makes sense to do it that way.
Let me do a little detour to the main town, and we have to talk to one NPC here to advance that even more. And this is basically the last part of the side quest that we have to investigate Scorpio Temple. Now, again, Scorpio Temple is a temple that we have not been before, and obviously it will be our next goal now, because that is where the side quest will find its conclusion, so to speak. And now Scorpio Temple is another water temple, so of course we have to go back to the swamp to find our way to it. So these encounters are pretty powerful because we're kinda in the mid game by now.
Speaking of,
yes.
You were saying we only need to clear 8 out of 12. Is it the rest of them become post-game after you clear them?
No. You
Or
can
you have to
still
do 8,
them,
then you have to
just
do...
don't have to do them for the main story progression. Like, once you've done 8 temples, you can advance the main story without having to do the rest of them. But you're still free to do them. Because the game, the way the game is basically set up, like if you do the first 4 temples, which are, part of the main story, you get all of your main job crests for your characters. And then in temples 5 through 8, whichever one you choose, the rest of the temples that you have to do for the main quest, you get all of your sub-job crests. And then in all the optional temples, that is when you get your support job crests. What this basically means for the speedrun is that we have technically all of our main and support jobs, main and sub jobs, but we don't get any of the support jobs. And what makes all of these so different is because you've seen me choose the main jobs for my characters, and that changes how they look, that changes their stats pretty drastically, that also changes what they can equip, like which weapons, for example. And for the Ascension tree, a main job has access to everything, right? Like all the
stats, not just some of them.
All the abilities, all the passives. If you grab a sub job only gives you access to the active abilities of that job. For example, if you get the Black Mage as a sub job, you will only get the spells that you cast to deal damage to the enemies, but you won't get any of the passive abilities like the double cast that Ulan has and stuff like that, or even the stat increases.
Interesting.
And if you grab a support job, that only gives you access to the passive abilities of that job. So you don't get any of the actives or the stat increases. And that is kind of how they balance the fact that you get access to quote unquote all of the jobs that a character has access to.
So the job routing is incredibly important, which you take first. Sometimes you take a weaker.
You also cannot re-roll your jobs. Once you've selected one, that is set in stone. There's no way to change that other than doing a completely new playthrough.
Yeah.
That was definitely one thing that, the developers were criticized for quite a bit when the game released, but, they stood their ground. And I think it's, something...
It's an interesting idea to, give you a reason to replay through the game, where it's like the game playthrough is different based on that. Like from a routing perspective and a speedrunning perspective, it kind of stinks because you can't experiment as easily without going through it over and over again.
Absolutely. But yeah, that is also, why the jobs are the way they are for us here. And, you notice we have another change in our lineup here. We have Eco now instead of Ulan. We completely phased out Ulan, who has been like a staple for our team for a while here. And that is because we have this boss fight coming up. And this is Sibani. He is the Scorpio Astray. And he has the most phases out of any boss in the game. He has 8 phases that we have to get through. Now, the first 2 phases are kind of interesting because you see he has this big shield in front of him, and that makes it so that he nullifies physical attacks. So you can only deal damage with magic attacks, but he also has no weakness. So you cannot build up your FP when you fight him. So there's a very specific setup we're going to do. We're going to focus with our pager here. We're not going to use defense break because, again, he nullifies physical attacks. Defense break basically counts as a physical attack, so we would lose our FP. Now, the thing with FP also, which I haven't explained before, is your FP can go into the negative. You can have a maximum of minus 10 FP. And if you are in the negative, obviously, you cannot, use FP to empower your attacks, but you can also not use the focus command, which temporarily adds 1 FP to your count. That command is just not active or available when you're on the negative. So you definitely or always want to try to be in the positive here. Now, with Eco, we're going to use Crystal Break, which again decreases his strength and magic, but increases that of the rest of the party. Then we're going to use Fire Fuse on Alec here, because, it makes his physical attacks be magical attacks now. And then we're going to use Triple Slash with 1 FP and only 1, not 2, even though we technically have 2. We want to use 1 because he has the passive that gives him a 30% chance to get a critical hit when we use at least 1 FP with his attacks. So hopefully he gets at least 1 crit in out of the 3 attacks he does. And that should just be enough. Okay, even without the crit, it was enough to push him into the second phase. But as you can see, the damage routing is somewhat precise here. And this is also the reason why we picked up that stun guard ring a little bit earlier in the wind region, because as a counter to Alex triple slash, Zibani just used this chain attack, and that would normally stun Alex. So we would have to, cure the stun on him to continue on here. But because he has the stun guard ring equipped, we don't have to do that. Now we once again focus with Arpeggio. We then use Courage on Alec with Eco. Again, this is why we also picked Harnesser, because of the stat increases. That makes Alec even more powerful. And again, he tried to stun Alec. Doesn't matter because there's stun immune. You want to use Fire Fuse again on Alec. We get a supplement, that is great, so we can focus again. Now, supplement is a passive ability on Dagmar. Because he's a Chronomancer, he has a chance to get 2 turns, basically. And then we're going to use triple slash once more. I could have used 2 FP, actually. Yeah, it shouldn't matter too much. And yeah, now we get good crits, and that puts him into the third phase. Now, it takes a little while for the... Yeah, see? The model to update here, and now he doesn't have his shield anymore. He now resists physical attacks. He doesn't nullify them anymore, but more importantly, he now has elemental weaknesses. But now we can use defense break with Arpeggio. We lose 1 FP, but we still have 1, so that's good. With Eco, we are going to focus. And then Dagmar, once again, uses a Fire Fuse on Alec, because this guy is weak against fire now. So we're going to triple slash again. And that knocks him straight out of the third phase. Now he's in his fourth phase. He has only half of the amount of HP that he had before. And now with fully powered up Force Rima, we should just be able to... okay. I guess we're missing 1 level up or something, because, as you can see there, didn't quite knock out all of his HP.
Yeah, he got knocked out during one of the grind fights, so...
Right, yeah. That's probably why he's missing a level up or something. Oh, well. But yeah, normally Arpeggio should be able to already knock this guy into the next phase. So instead, he has a little bit of HP left. So Alec has to do a little bit of cleanup here again. Do the Fire Fuse into a triple slash. The reason you want to use triple slash is so we get more FP, because every hit with triple slash counts as an individual attack. So instead of just getting 2 FP for hitting a weakness, we get the full 6. We can try here again. Maybe we get a higher roll on Force Rima to already knock him into the 5th phase, I think. And no, we don't. Okay. Wait, where is it? Courage. So yeah, sadly this will be a little bit of a slower fight, but sometimes it just is what it is.
My turn now.
I still want to keep triple slashing just so I get, excuse me, the maximum amount of FP here.
Yeah, such as the marathon luck, as it were. Sometimes that you kind of run into a situation where you're like, well, I normally would have killed the run already.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, that's what happens. That's why I never do this. That's unfortunate.
Oh, well, it is.
When a boss transition phases, does it reset the turn order? Or does it continue the same turn order regardless of the boss's?
The same turn order you had before, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we have a little bit of a problem there because Alec died, and I also have to use...
buff him and then re-heal him, and it's kind of messing with your...
It shouldn't matter too much because we're pretty close to the end of this fight anyway. And I think this should be his last phase. Or was there one more? No, it's his last phase. So see, he's now invisible. However, when he's invisible, he's now weak to physical attacks.
But incredibly hard to hit. Or just straight up weak to physical.
Yep. And as you can see, if we just use triple slash, fully powered up.
Oh yeah, use the FP to pretty much guarantee the hit.
And the crit, and that guy just dies right there. So sadly, it didn't quite
Melted
work out because, Arpeggio lost a little bit on the experience there. But this is like one of the hardest roadblocks, just because, this guy has like 8 phases that you have to get through, which is quite a lot. So there's a lot of attack that goes into it and the routing. But it just feels really good to get like the quote-unquote proper fight against him, where even Arpeggio is able to knock him through the phases. It just feels really good to do that.
Yeah, when you're just boop, phase, boop, phase, boop, phase.
Exactly. Like, you can basically push him 2 phases in one round with both Arpeggio and Alec. But sadly, it didn't quite work out this way, so we only had to...
One at a time.
To get 1 phase at a turn, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, you can probably guess the gimmick of this temple. It's like, all these...
Gravity.
Around of the screen to make blocks fall, which makes other stuff happen. And it can be a little bit disorientating at times for sure, because the camera is also a little bit lagging behind when you're moving.
Yeah, I know. I want to say it's 4. Mega Man X4 does something like this with Cyber Peacock's stage, where it kind of rotates your orientation. It's a really cool gimmick with like side scrollers like this, playing with your orientation top, bottom, side to side. I think X8 also does it as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I think a lot of Mega Mans actually have it in them at some point. Yeah. Okay, this fight. This fight is only available if you do the side quest chain that we are on. This is like the fight from the side quest, which we are here for. And oh god, what was it? Fire, I think. Yeah, fire.
So the fight's a matter of
fuse.
The fight's a matter of consequence rather than you're specifically looking for this fight. You want to get what's done with the side quest, but not this specific fight, right?
Like that?
Not quite sure what you're trying to say there.
You're after the reward from doing the side quest, not specifically the encounter.
Oh, yeah. But again, this fight only shows up for the side quest, so it's like intrinsically to that, so you have to do it for that. But yeah, exactly.
Because, sometimes you do a side quest chain because there's a nice fight that gives a bunch of stuff, but the item is garbage.
No. This is literally only for the reward.
Yeah.
So this guy just keeps evading my attacks. What is this? Can you please die? Yeah, sadly, this little bugger there also dodged one of my attacks, so I have to do a little bit cleanup there.
And the enemies are very evasive.
Mm-hmm.
Guess FP routing is incredibly important too, to make sure you land your hits, but not perfect.
That's like the thing, right? Like, you can choose to allocate your stats towards accuracy. To obviously be able to hit the enemies more consistently, but that comes at the cost of another stat that you could increase in stats. So, what do you choose? Like, pick your poison, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, God. I just, hit that enemy, and you heard by the sound that was a surprise attack. So the enemy gets to get first, and they, confuse Arpeggio.
Who's definitely going first because he has the highest agility.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my.
Okay. But hey, at least, I get to show off what happens if you actually run into a surprise attack and how squishy we actually are.
Like most speed runs, we are just one punch away from being dead, quite literally.
Yeah, we can handle the boss. It's always funny to me, that in RPG speedruns you can handle the bosses because you have to. But as soon as you run into a normal encounter, you are basically toast.
I think it's more so like in a speed run, you design your run to survive the boss, but you're never accounting for the enemy to get a hold of you, and they usually have a different attack pattern. So it's like, oh, you do fire? Well, that's funny. I'm weak to that. How unfortunate.
Also, here we picked up the upgrade to the watering, and as you can see, we can now walk on water. Like, for some reason, there's like a little bit over here where you can still die sometimes. I guess, the hit zone doesn't extend all the way or something. But yeah, we can now walk on water. So we don't have to be, quote unquote, afraid of water surfaces anymore. And can traverse those now unimpeded.
Have you ever tested to see if jumping at all is faster than just normal running?
I have not specifically tested it, no, but it's pretty much at the same speed.
It's what it looks like, but you never know, right? Because, like, in 16, hopping upstairs is actually faster than walking up them, despite the fact that it wouldn't seem like that. It's those weird movement optimizations that you have to be mindful of, especially when you're routing alone.
I mean, you have a point. I never specifically tested it, that's true.
Hey man, I wouldn't say I'm right. I'm more often wrong than not, but it's those ideas that's the fun part about routing, especially if you have somewhat of a community, is being able to like cooperatively work together and workshop ideas. It's a really enjoyable part of speedrunning.
Wait. What did I forget?
Statue?
Oh, no. Right. I am an idiot. We just do this. There we go. You see, that is what I mean with, when you tumble this thing around so often. That sometimes you get just a little bit confused. Okay, where am I in the puzzle right now?
I'm not going to act like
What
that's
do I
not happened to me before. I've been like, wait, where am I?
Yeah.
Hold on, what's happening? Looks at notes, looks back at game, looks back at notes. Oh! Scrolls notes up.
Okay, yeah, that was one of the temples that we had to do. And now to get our reward, because, we did do that specific side quest. And we can now go to this little guy and pick up our reward. And then we continue on a little bit. I'm not going to spoil it what it was just yet, but we'll see that in just a bit. In the meantime, we're going back here, and we are now going to the third and final water temple, which is Cancer Temple. And Cancer Temple might be one of my favorite temples in the game simply because of how broken it is, or how broken we've made it with everything that we've picked up so far.
Uh-oh. You can't say something like that and not deliver.
You will see in just a moment. Just a short walk over here. The first thing is, we don't have to do this puzzle here at all anymore. We normally have to take the water and, then go up there and do a bit more stuff to grab more boxes and whatnot and do a certain level and blah, blah, blah. Nope. We went to Scorpio Temple first, grab that watering. So we walked just right over that complete puzzle. Kind of a herald of things to come.
What I'm thinking with that getting killed by the water is like when you jump into it, it overlaps the hitboxes because they kind of maybe they descend a little bit lower. So you unintentionally push your hitbox a little bit lower and it hits the
good point
void out plane.
So this is the weapon that we got from the side quest that we did, the Chrysals. And if you see in the lower left, that gives us plus 66 magic attack. It's like about
just a little
or something of not quite half, but close enough to what we already have. It's immense, and you know how much damage Ulan already did to all of these enemies. So she's now even more broken than she was before. Let's just quickly go through these things, and then go to Eco. And Eco now gets the stun guard ring and the confuse guard ring. It's important that he gets those. Just make sure that that. Okay. So, that is basically why we wanted to do this side quest jam, because it was kind of on the way. So not much time lost there, but the payoff. The payoff.
That has to be like a half hour's worth of grind to get that much extra damage, for sure. Versus like a 5-minute side quest.
Mm-hmm. We will see this in just a moment here. So we are going to build up our FP as we usually do. Then with Alec, we're going to use Omni Courage to buff our physical attack even more. And then with Ulan, we are going to use Nixus, which is a level 3 lightning spell, not 4. Can be more powerful. But yeah, that's the first phase of this guy done. Also, he is super cute. I want to plush up this guy. Well, not anymore now, but the first phase that we just
Phase
saw.
1, yeah. Phase 1 I'll put on a shelf. This one, no. I'm throwing that in the trash.
Oh, he actually missed. He's never missed me with that attack before.
This has just been the run of all time.
Here we go. Interestingly enough, this guy is weak against darkness and not light, as you might expect from his coloring here.
Yeah, the design definitely makes me think like light spells or maybe lightning.
Yep. Nope. It is a darkness. And yeah, that was a boss fight. And now we get into the temple proper. And, as I said before, we kind of broke this temple in half. So there's obviously a lot of water-related puzzle where you have to use your watering, to get through different areas and whatnot. But what if instead we once again used our earth power to just completely skip this and not having to go left and all the way around and grab water to raise the water level? Probably takes a minute or longer to do that. We're just not in that. Or even here, we have this water wheel, with the platforms that go the wrong way. But hey, we can walk on water because we've been on the other temple first, so we can completely skip that.
Bit of Metroid routing. Like, hey, what if I just get the Varia suit and then I can just ignore all of this? Yeah, that sounds like the right play.
Now, sadly, we still have to go up here and grab this water. Because we have to play a little bit by the rules. So we haven't completely broken the temple, but we've broken it good enough.
That kind of design is very good and rewarding in, like, if you route it in a specific way, it will speed other things up. So I really appreciate design like that quite a bit.
Yeah, and that is like what really makes this run so interesting, in my opinion, because you have quite a bit of that. Where with clever routing, you can just save so much time later on in the run that you might not even see at the start, right? Because all these abilities, it's free for you to decide in which order you pick them up, but what gives you the most bang for your buck, so to speak, here. And this I love basically the most. Like, normally what you're supposed to do is go to the upper right there and solve a whole bunch of puzzles to be able to get water here to be able to make this wheel turn. But instead, what you can do is summon this. Okay, kind of failed it. So we have to redo that. No worries. Jump on that and jump over there, and we can just make it to the other side. And that's the whole temple. That's basically it.
Nice.
So
You gotta love that.
If you remember, how long the other temples were and how much, puzzle solving you had to do at some of them. Yeah, this temple is so short.
It's a time investment, right? Going to the other ones earlier, taking maybe slightly harder fights versus, I think your puzzles are interesting, but I don't care anymore.
Now we go to a second wind temple, the Libra temple. So of course we start off with the boss fight. It's also interesting design, that a lot of these bosses in the temples are at the start of the temple and not at the end, as you have in a lot of other games. But what Shamash always does, he puts whatever it was called just now, which basically puts every single status element in the game in one character, and that is why we bought these panaceas a little bit earlier, so we can just immediately get rid of that. Then he is weak against Earth because he's a wind type boss. So we build up our FP here. We're gonna use Omni Courage again, and then because Ulan has the Chrysos and a level 3 Earth spell, she will just completely tear him apart. And when he changes into a phase 2 now, he will now use what's it called, Omni Malediction, I think. Which puts Omni Punishment, which puts every single status ailment on your whole party. Now, this is why we wanted the anti-confuse and anti-stun ring on Eco, so he can still get a turn because he's the fastest out of my party, and use an Omni Panacea on the whole group to get rid of all the status effect that Shamash just put on us. Then we're going to use a Light Fuse or Area Fuse on Alec, so Light Elemental. And we're going to Triple Slash, and that is this guy, Dunzos.
Yeah, that is an interesting dynamic to shift and put the bosses at the beginning, because then you can justify making them a lot harder too, because you're not balancing around resource use in the dungeon, and it's like, well, this is the first fight, so we have every excuse to have this hip check you right back out the door.
But it's also the thing, if you keep in mind that you have access to, basically, as you said before, a lot of items that you can use, a lot of good items that you can use basically at any point, because you can just go ahead and buy them. The developers kind of get away with giving the enemy so many status elements that they can use, and other quote-unquote unfair things that would be really unfair in other games. But in this one, maybe not so much, because you actually have enough resources to combat that.
Yeah, like instead of offensive abilities, now we're looking at like, oh, I can just omni remedy my entire party. Any other game, like you'd have to have the magic spell and then some way to magnify it to the entire party and then cast it too. So like there's a lot of like how much time, how much investment versus like pop an item. All right, we're good to go. Let's go. It's an interesting dynamic because some games items, like you said, never ever really see use, because you don't have easy access to them. Meanwhile, in this game, the game just kind of gives them up. What is...
Yeah, it's a bit wonky at this point, because this box stack always gets pushed up by this little air vent from up above, and for some reason it takes forever to get into position the other side there. So it's a bit funky the first time you see this.
I mean, to be fair, at least it's like indie devs versus like Bethesda. Right? It's like we have an excuse to have a couple of issues in our game versus like, nah, the fans can fix it.
True.
Anyway, the stuff like that is kind of endearing too, anyway. It leaves impression on you. You're like, well, that was certainly a thing that happened.
It's just, if you're in a speedrun, you're just always like, come on, get in position.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, while the box isn't this air vent, you can't use the airing power to push it further. You have to wait for it to hit solid ground again.
I'm ready.
No, so this is one of the normal fights that, again, I have to take because it's like in a very narrow corridor. And it's one of the more harrowing ones for sure, depending on what the enemy makeup is here. So let's just hopefully get through this with an Omni Slash and be done with it.
That makes me wonder if you can like hit a frame perfect shot while it's touching the ground and push it over.
Oh god.
The animation will just...
It is.
I mean, if it's just a matter of just poking at it and be like, well, I hope this works. Nope. I mean, it's not any slower than it was before, right?
Fair enough.
Hey, free time. Now I'm going to go lose that to something else. Such is the life of an RPG speedrunner. Do a silly 10-second trick, lose 35 seconds to the next boss.
Yeah, speaking of, we have something like that coming up in just a moment here. So what we're trying to do here in this temple right now is we have to hit 2 switches in order to make an air vent appear that takes us to the next higher level. And for that, we have to go through a left and a right wing. And we are currently in the right wing. And nearly done with it. Okay, got the jump. Cool. This is the first button. And okay, there we can see this spinny thing turning on. And you can already see this other button like up in the top left there. That's the other one that we have to activate. Now, what you can do, if you go to the very edge of this platform and then very specifically put the statue in the air and manage to jump off of it while it's still in the air, you can reach this other platform. It's like a triple frame perfect trick because, you have to, at the certain position during your jump, you have to summon the statue. You then have to, a very specific point, start your jump to land on the statue and jump up again.
Gotta get it on the highest height.
Do it, but never in a run. And if you manage to do this, it saves you all of what I am doing here now, which is about 2 minutes or so of running around. But yeah, it's like triple frame perfect. It is Yeah, it's a thing.
That's definitely not as simple as just shooting it with the ring and hoping it works, for sure.
And
If it were earlier in the run, but considering how deep that is into the run, I can understand your hesitance to waste an entire 3 hours on a 2-minute trick. Kind of, it's pretty reasonable to me.
Yeah, so if we are in a speedrun, we are now at roughly the 3 hour. Oh god, surprise attack again? Are you kidding me? I think I should just take this fight.
We could just turn the encounters off, right? Because you don't need any more.
You know what? You actually got a point. Maybe we should just go ahead and do that. Yeah, we are about roughly 3 hours and 10 minutes into the run, so there's only 20 minutes or so left of this. So it is very late in the run.
Yeah, Rebirth had a skip like that too in one of the segments where we had to go around the edge of the room and try and avoid getting into a fight with a really annoying enemy. And then it turns out if we go to the left side of the room, it's much easier to clip through the bottom of the floor instead of doing it the intended way. Oh, I guess they just stay there. Huh.
I guess so.
Well, that's interesting.
Or maybe
I guess it. Well, let's see if it removes them after you spawn back in.
Did I select the wrong one?
Huh. I guess it
cannot make that jump.
I guess it only affects their spawns, not if they are spawned.
You have to probably recycle
the area, yeah.
In there. Okay, let's just get rid of them. Because that's another thing, right? I've never really thought about disabling this for some reason. Although, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it like that and just go with the flow, I suppose.
I mean, on paper, if you're gonna take a skip 3 fights, but take one of them, then yeah, it's worth keeping it on. But once you hit a point where you've already power leveled through, you might as well just turn it off. Because
basically, after all the grinding we've done, you can probably turn any of these off because you're not powerful enough to be able to, fight them anyway. I mean, look at how long it takes me to get through this normal encounter. Because
meanwhile,
dodging my attacks, I might get a surprise attack out of it. And
meanwhile, a boss is 4 turns.
Yeah.
These guys are 8.
Okay, so we've got have to push this box over there.
Dude, my Mega Man brain is kicking
this
in.
Is where the button is that you could have jumped to from there. So
I love how you entered the bottom door and then didn't really go up, but somehow ended up above.
It's magic.
Yeah, some MC Escher design going on in here.
So up here we now pick up the upgrade for our wind ring, and we can now. Well, I don't dare say fly, but we can definitely glide.
Float. Yeah.
Around here. So that definitely gives us the opportunity to just also take long jumps between these platforms and whatever.
Avoid falling down too far and coming back up. Yeah, that'll speed things up.
Bum, 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 ba-dum. So just making our way through these platforms to the top. Oop. There's one section coming up. I think it's the next screen already. Where I always feel a little bit like I'm playing Donkey Kong Country. And
I can see that.
Let's see if you can immediately guess why.
I'm looking for the DK barrel now.
Not quite, but part here.
Yeah.
And And I kind of always, I mean, I love the music in this game. I think it's pretty good. But I always kind of wish, that Stick Up, oh my god, how did I hit that? That Stick Up Bush Symphony would play here.
Yeah.
Because it feels kind of fitting.
Bramble stages were kind of iconic to some extent, for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, this definitely is not as brutal as Donkey Kong Country in those stages for sure. It's definitely a bit more relaxed.
Yeah.
JRPG after all, but yeah, still.
Without the enemies in there to like be a nuisance to make the movement harder,
Yes.
it definitely allows you to concentrate a lot more on movement instead of like spitting coconuts.
Oh my god, imagine if you could do that here as well.
Just find a way to clip through by like bouncing a coconut off the wall and hitting yourself and getting like iframes. Oh man, that'd be fantastic.
Can you imagine? But yeah, this is Libra Temple. This was the 8th temple that we would do. And we can now continue on with the main quest. So obviously, we will be immediately thrust into a next boss fight, which once again is against these Oasis guys. They just don't let up. This time there's 4 of them. So once again, we're softening them up a little bit with the Omniforcius. Oh, okay. So I thought good. Use Crystal Break. And you can see they buff each other up with like auto regen and evade and all that stuff. That makes them even more annoying than they already are. And then we pray that Omni Slash gets rid of at least 3 of them. It got rid of none of them.
Oh boy.
Okay. Cool. And we must have gotten like the lowest rolls, all of them all. Ooh.
I'm a fool.
Oh.
Well,
All yours.
it's definitely going a bit sideways. Okay, we definitely should have the FP to kill them now, though.
Nice.
Oh my god.
Oh.
Can you stop?
Well, that's some tanky burbs.
Oh my god, he missed again.
We're definitely falling into jerkbird territory.
Absolutely. Oh my lord. I think he's weak against light, yeah, so let's just use an area fuse. I guess I have to triple slash you to kill you.
Nice.
Like, I've had bad fights against these guys, but I don't think I've ever had it this bad. Like, my lord, they will just absolute chance here.
Getting stronger and stronger.
Anyway, we defeated them, so now we finally gain entrance to Wyndham, which is like the last town, or the last town we haven't been to yet, the town of the Oasis themselves. So we're going to do a little bit of shopping here to grab some more weapons. 6, you want 2 Nashiras, you want an Albali and an Al-Nasl. And then obviously you want to equip all of that. And Eco gets a little bit more magic defense. And then we're immediately thrust into another somewhat tough encounter. Or boss fight, I should say. But you can definitely see, like the boss fights that are against multiple targets like this are probably the toughest in the game, especially in the speedrun, because, we are so squishy and they are kind of guaranteed to get at least 1 hit in. And yeah, they will just kill your characters like this. Oh boy.
Some strong marathon luck kicking in here.
Yep. The enemies are kind of starting to be aware that we're coming to the end of this.
I can commiserate, man. I've had a couple of runs where I could have sworn I would do a lot better, and then this happened. I've been there before, trust me.
But that also, goes to show like the balance between things going right and going wrong, because we definitely had some fights, where you just saw me absolutely smash through the enemies. But then on the other side, something like this can happen where just one little thing goes wrong and all of a sudden everything is up in the air, right?
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna buy 2 of these. I think I'm still good on life course. I am, and angel wings. Oh wait, angel wings. Okay. So we're actually going back to the temple that we just were in, because there's actually a story event there, which is also one of the reasons why we, selected this particular temple, because otherwise we had to do the boss fight here anyway before the story fight would trigger. So we're gonna defense break him. Go try to assassinate Arpeggio. Okay, he actually assassinates Arpeggio. Oh, hello. Can you stop doing that? It's okay if he kills Arpeggio. It's not so okay if he kills somebody else.
My turn now. Yeah.
At least they're as lethal as they look.
Fair enough. But they also die pretty quickly, which is good for me.
Yeah. I prefer not to die, but at least they look cool.
So yeah, we are very quickly coming towards the end of the run here now, because if you thought that this game was a boss rush so far, well, it's gonna be even more boss rushy from here on out. We are gonna change our party again. We're gonna bring in this guy because we want Alec. Yes.
This is the first I've heard of Wilkite too. I really
We're gonna have another, our last shoot 'em up section here, which is actually a boss fight. So there's only going to be one enemy that we're fighting here.
So how does the shooting mechanics work here? Do you just have to mash, or does it just shoot as soon as the pellet's off screen?
You can actually hold down the button. You can have up to, I think, 3 projectiles or so on the screen. But if you hit something, they immediately disappear. So you really want to, get into the face of that enemy and just shoot it.
Yeah, so if you face plant like that, it basically turns on turbo.
Exactly.
Nice.
And this boss fight is a little bit tricky. Like, she doesn't look that menacing, but if the turn ends, she will start summoning previous bosses as her helpers, and you have to defeat them before you can damage her again. So it's like really important that you actually kill her on the first turn, because otherwise this fight turns into an absolute slog.
Yeah, I was looking at the size of the arena, and my brain immediately told me that something was wrong here.
Yep.
Especially watching the camera pan out, I'm like, that's not good. That's not good at all.
Yep. But thankfully, Earth Infuse and a triple slash makes pretty short work of her, so it's not too much to worry about.
So as long as you're ready for it, the fight doesn't spiral. But I'd imagine casually that was a very rough fight to get through.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. So we're just gonna quickly get rid of these guys. Hold on a
Too
second.
bad there's nothing that like increases your movement speed in dungeons, so that it's a little bit quicker to get through.
Sadly, no. But I mean, I think like Ulan, or the character that I control, already moves pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So it's not too much of a need there.
It's just Mega Man-itis, right? I'm like, where's my dash boots? Where's my dash boots? Where's my dash boots?
True. Quickly going to Alec and grabbing more HP and a little bit more strength still. Can never have too much strength, right?
Yeah.
Then
It's always interesting to see, especially when the runs get really optimized, where you hit a point where it's like, well, it would be nice to get it, but it costs me an extra like 3 seconds, so I don't pick it up. And where you end it, because like Tifa has a lot of really strong abilities in Rebirth, but in easy and even in normal, you skip a lot of them because they just take too much time to pick up, which is surprising.
So this guy is weak against physical attacks again. So, well, he just basically dies, but he also uses Omni-Mute, and that is why we bought that second Omni Panacea. So we can just, immediately use that, so our characters can use abilities again. Because the thing is, when they are muted, they also can't use the physical abilities, because, those count as, well, abilities.
Yeah, their abilities, anything that requires. With the Panacea, would that remove debuffs as well, or is it just for status ailments? Ooh.
Nope, it removes everything that negatively impacts your character.
That's nice.
And then he is weak against darkness, so we're doing an Umbra Infuse on Alec, and then we are triple slashing, and this guy should die.
Yeah, because I know a lot of the time in SMT, you spend a lot of time rebuffing if you get debuff like that, but the fact that you can just remove the debuffs and then power up again really quick is super nice. Definitely a much more player-friendly design.
Oh, for sure. Again, it is kind of inspired by SMT, but it is not SMT.
Yeah. I mean, some of the playstyles in SMT really only kind of fit a certain player demographic, and this kind of bridges the gap between those, from what I'm noticing anyway, where it's a lot more...
That's a good point to put it, yeah.
It's a lot more simple and in the player's favor versus SMT, where it's well, your MC died.
Stacked against.
Time to start again.
Okay, this guy is weak against light, so once again, area infuse on Alec. Also, we just passed the point of no return. You might have seen it pop up on screen for just a little bit there. So the game actually wants hey, if you go beyond this point, there is no going back. So we are now about to enter the final dungeon of the game.
Don't underestimate us.
Nope. And this is a proper maze, let me tell you. Oh my god. So we are going to go middle. We are going to go middle again. Then we are going to the right for the chest. Make sure this enemy is stunned so he doesn't run into us. We pick up the robe. Then we go back. And then we go right. And then we go right again. And then we go right one. No, wait, let me pick this up. Yeah, we see plate. There we go. And then we go right again. So the reason this dungeon is so hard is because everything kind of looks the same, as you probably noticed. So you can very easily get lost in here. So don't mind me while I loudly proclaim where we're going, just so I can keep track of it. And this is the last part, so we go middle. And to the top right. Let's see if I can make this jump. I cannot. I think I might as well try and get rid of these enemies because I have to come back this way, because we're only going this way to pick up another treasure chest in the next room. But as you can see, the enemies in here, no slouch.
Yeah, it definitely looks like shutting them off at a certain point would be extremely beneficial, especially since there's a couple of these where you just can't sneak through them.
Yep.
Just need to adjust and make sure that
it's very precise.
Yeah.
So it's very precise jumps, and if you don't get it, well, you're stuck in this fight that takes you, I don't know how long to get through.
Or 5 minutes trying to jump over it. Yeah.
God. Alec is confused and is not killing my healer.
Oh, that's very rude. You murdered him 3 times, man. He was your friend. I really prefer the variety of confuse that can only use physical attacks. Because confusion that uses abilities is terrifying.
Yep. Okay, we're gonna use the, I'm gonna go all out, use the angel wings, bring the whole team back at full HP. Or, the ones that were dead. And then we are going to remedy Alec. Please and thank you. Whew. Gets the blood pumping right before the end, doesn't it? But yeah, no. When one of your characters gets confused, they have the whole ability range as a selection, which
That's an SMT difficulty thing I expect to happen.
So we're gonna pick up these armors. Okay, make our way back.
I gotta love the God of War breaking the chest open rather than just opening it.
You don't kick your chests when you want to open them?
I mean, it's not like the chests need to exist after I take whatever is inside out, so I might as well break them in half.
Exactly. Now you get it. But yeah, as you can see, it's like really samey looking everything here, for better or worse. But it definitely makes this like a proper maze right at the end here.
Yeah, that's always one of those that can be kind of difficult, is designs like this where it's very easy to get disoriented.
Okay, but we made it. So we only have the last boss fight remaining.
Sounds nice. Sounds good.
So we're gonna change our party once more. We're gonna bring in Ulan again, and we're gonna bring in Caden. Alex stays. We're gonna go to our equipment, and that is why we picked up the reason why we picked up all of these armors will become very clear shortly, I hope. Equip that, and he gets the OEC armor. Then we go to the Ascension tree. Pick up any last things that we need to make us stronger. Magic. Captain can also do this. Zimar gets more HP. And then we can skip that. Okay. So this is going to be our final party. Going into the final fights. And,
I have to say, the design of starting with all 8 characters is very interesting, since most RPGs build you up, or maybe give you 1 or 2, but starting with all 8 is really interesting.
I mean, it ties on this whole theme that these characters have been adventuring together already for like 2.5 years or so. So obviously they know each other. You're kind of just, getting thrust into them. But it's definitely, also kind of nice because right from the get-go, you can kind of build your party the way you want it to, except of the jobs. But this right here, these attacks that this guy did, is exactly where he picked up these last armors. Because these last armors nullify physical attacks, but make you very weak against magic. And he uses Omni Triple Slash at the start of the fight. So if you don't have anything to mitigate that, you are basically toast.
Best case scenario, you have to grab at least one of them so that you can revive your party.
But there's another reason why we grabbed them, and that will become apparent in the next fight. Because obviously, this guy wasn't the final boss just yet. The final boss is just around the corner. So just, should be fine.
That's a definite, rude check. By the way.
Oh, yes. If you go casually into this fight, you just use this and you basically...
You just die every time. You're like, really? I got noob trapped on the second to final boss? Bullshit.
Okay, this is fine. He always basically kills one of my characters at the start here. This is why we bring Caden, so she can just revive somebody. And he is weak against physical attacks at the beginning, so we are going to focus. And then Alec can just use a triple slash again, and that gets rid of the first phase. Also, I really like the music here. Then in the second phase, he is weak against half of the elements. So he's weak against ice, shadow, and 2 others that I can't recall off the top of my head. I would have to check again. But
these other 2
ice. We have level 4 ice magic, so we're just gonna hit him there. I guess the transformation took a little bit.
That looks more like a meteor spell than an ice spell, but okay.
Malediction is not good. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. But again, he's also weak against shadow, so That was the second phase. Now in the third phase, he is weak against all the other elements. So instead of ice, he's weak against fire. Again, instead of shadow, he's weak against light. So we're gonna use an aerial fuse on Alec. We are then gonna triple slash him once more.
Just a small 200% buff. Don't worry about it.
And that puts him in the final phase right here. I guess the animation for the face change is a little bit slow again. Sadly, Ulan is stunned. Yeah, Time Catch is a bad ability. Okay, here's the face change animation. What Time Catch does is it transfers all of my FP over to him. And in his last phase, he doesn't have a weakness anymore, so...
Can't get FP anymore, I see.
Yep. This is going to be somewhat of a slow fight now, and you're basically at the mercy of the RNG if he does it or not. If he doesn't do it, it's going to be a pretty fast fight. But, well, he did it, so we have to stalk through a little bit. But yeah, and it's basically around the corner here. All right, she's stunned. I forgot about that. Oops. When he does time leap, basically your whole team doesn't get to act for a turn. So basically he gets a free turn. Also, nothing you can do about that. It just loses your time. So basically, yeah, Omniforcius hit. Now this is, oh god, the worst ability that he could have used. Oh no, wait. No, was it? Yeah, kinda. Because as you can see, there's nothing I can do about that, and it hits your whole party for non-elemental damage, which you cannot defend against. So that's always fun to see.
So as long as he's not Marin-carring you, so your party full heals the final boss.
But that is also why we picked up these other armors, because it deals half physical damage and half non-elemental damage. So if we didn't have that thing that nullifies the physical half of which all the party would have died like outright. This time it only hit Kaden. And that's the final boss done, and that would be time.
Nice. Ooh. That was...
And there you have it.
Very interesting. It's always good to
there's like a whole new post-game dungeon that kind of meshes together all the other dungeons. There's like 10 floors with new bosses in there and a whole bunch of stuff. So there's also all kind of side quests you can do. We haven't done 4 of the temples that you could revisit and all this good stuff. So there's still, reasons, I guess, to continue playing this game. Also, as you can see, we've kind of finished at around level 25. If you play this casually, you're probably like in the high 40s. So we're about half of that. So that kind of tells you, how much we skipped on all of that.
All right. I posted a link to the trailer for their next game for those that might be interested. Maybe we'll be able to showcase that off in the future. But for now, is there anything you want to say before we head on out?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me on for the show. It went a little bit longer than I thought it would. To be fair, I guess we talked a little bit more.
Yeah.
We were doing the whole thing because it went a bit slower. If you're interested in this or any others, you can find me on Twitch TV with aeshmah and _ at the end. I mainly run samurai-centric games like Ghost of Tsushima, Onimusha, Rise of the Ronin, but also, some JRPGs like Astria Ascending or Ruined King, a League of Legends story, which I will be showcasing to you during Questing for Glory 7, which will happen in just about a month from now on this very YouTube channel, Twitch channel. I guess also on YouTube if you're watching over there. So, yeah. Once again, thank you so much for having me. I hope some of you might want to check out this game now. It's a very fun one. Do reach out if you do. And, off to use it.
Yeah, as long as things go right, we'll try and make sure that link's also available in the VODs as well. But my name's Sid. Thank you guys for watching, and we're going to head on out of here. Have a good one. Peace.
Bye-bye.